Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Speaking of patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Austin Whitsitt, John Kays, DL Hill, Julian Jeremiah, Tommy Saragwitz. Is that a new Patreon? They're normally at the top of the list. Yeah, Tommy Swagnuts. Just get your name right. I think I've got a new Patreon. Let's just double check, make sure I've not made a cock up. No, it looks like it. I've got a new Patreon. So very warm welcome to you, Tommy. Thank you very much for joining as a Patreon of Nathan Oakley 1980. Also, Michael Kahn, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B. Styles, Troy Shuker, Bo Snail, Samson, Maris, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Last Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Fireball X, theflatearthchannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
They call it the key to the city. The key being the well, this is still the early show, so I don't know if I can. So basically, if you want to do anything indoors, pretty much anything at all, you have to be safe, you know. And I'm just thinking, well, what about all the people that work in these establishments? Are they required to? How is this going to play out? Are people going to comply?
Eli, revolution, you know? Eli. They're not going to. This is the end. It's going to hit the fan.
Nature of the universe, nature of the world, definitely not a societal.
Yeah, well, the world is going a crazy way.
Okay.
I understand what you say, you know, not here. This ain't the time to talk about it, right?
Well, it's not that it ain't the time, it's just whatever time you want. It's just that's not the shape of us. My
well,
bad.
It is. This is the nature of reality,
I was
isn't
interrupted by your distortion and...
Sorry. All right, I'm on mute.
You can talk about whenever you like, right? It's whatever. But, you know, unless you can link that at a societal level to what we actually discuss here, the nature of reality, yes, you can link that. We're under a societal matrix structure that has rules that you don't like, and therefore it's so loosely related to the nature of Earth when claimed to be a sphere that, you know, you'd have to actually make those steps like I just did to make it even vague rather than just moaning about it. No offence to you, Eli.
Yeah, well, I guess I would argue that what's going on today is exactly why we're under this matrix or this paradigm that we're under. Like, let's replace the Cyrus with heliocentrism. I wonder how many people spoke up against it. I wonder how it just ended up in all of the schools. You know, it just happened. Like, that's exactly how it happened. That's the connection there. Like, people didn't stand up, and here we are.
I mean, people allowed the state to educate their children in their religion of the state, and then they didn't moan that when handing their kids over to the state to be educated, they didn't get the education that they would prefer they were given. They were given the state's education. Yeah, I can see how that would really annoy people.
No, well, people did rise up. Eli, people did rise up, though. They didn't just sit there and take it. There was a lot of people fighting against it.
No, that's not true. because okay, a lot of people fought against it, but it wouldn't be a reality if there weren't enough people to comply, just like right now. But Nathan is right. Ultimately, it's because we don't have autonomy over ourselves anymore. We just let people do whatever and have us think whatever. We don't think for ourselves. Yesterday I spoke about the mind like a muscle. You have to exercise it. So every time I talk to someone like a normie, like there's a very good chance that they're gonna, have logical fallacies on their lips, and it might be multiple in one sentence, as my friend Gregory put it. And that being said, nobody wants to hear you stop like them mid-sentence every 5 minutes or every 2 minutes to say, you didn't think correctly. That's logically fallacious. No, you've reached your conclusion in a fallacious, that gets tiresome to someone who's never had to think. It's just like, I don't know, like if anything that you have to change that would be uncomfortable, like changing to a different remote if you play a game, it might be a little awkward at first. Well, thinking is a little awkward at first, but you got to do it. You got to exercise your brain.
Eli, I could give you yesterday's, how can you put it? I shared last week my granddaughter had to go in because the growth plate on their wrist got smashed, and the whole fiasco at the emergency room. So they had to go yesterday to adjust the cast. It's been a week. So they went, and as soon as they walked in, the doctor on the floor said, you need to wear a mask.
Sounds a lot like medical stuff again.
Well, I know. I'm just telling him what happened to where he knows what we have to do or what he can do. So,
why? Can't you tell him somewhere else on a show that discusses medical information rather than this?
That's fine. Eli, in the after show, I'll talk to you about it.
All right.
Yeah, it's good. It's real good.
Look, I get it. People are concerned. I get it. But this isn't the place. I'm really sorry. And do you want to know why?
That's fine.
Do you want to know why? Well, because we're not allowed. That's the bottom line. It's against the rules. So I'm here to enforce them because I like my show being on air.
I totally agree. That's why we have the after show.
Could I change the subject?
Who said that? Yes, please.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Brian.
Everyone. I just don't have any interest in the subject.
Well, I do have an interest in that video you shared, Nathan. The is it science?
Okay, I'll give a lead up to that, but I think Brian might have something else to say. He said he's segued us away beautifully and just said, I'm not interested in that. Epic, thank you, Brian. So I'm going to give Brian the floor first, if you don't mind. I do want to obviously talk about that, but yes.
Oh no, I have interest. I'm interested in the big picture, which is the world of physics and what is real and what is not, and the world we live in and its nature. And that's the only thing that I think is worth being interested in. But I don't judge it either. So off you go, John.
Fair enough. Well, right, John.
Yeah, what I was going to say is it possible for someone to perform the scientific method accidentally?
No.
You don't think that someone could manipulate an independent variable?
You just make me laugh. When it's at your door, then you're going to realize I'm done.
Neil. Hello. Go on, John.
Well, I'm just saying, is it possible that this guy, not knowing the scientific method, actually performed it, but he didn't formulate it correctly, but still came to the same results?
No. Want to know why?
He didn't have a phenomenon.
Well, that's the first and major and main and ultimate problem. Yes, well identified, Brian. But also, no, you don't accidentally formulate an independent and dependent and control variable situation with a null hypothesis by accident. That will, in the history of mankind, never, ever, ever happen.
Is the clarity of sound a naturally observed phenomenon?
That's not something happening. How clear something is isn't an occurrence in terms of something happening. It's just how clear something is. Would you call that something occurring?
Well, the sound is something occurring.
You didn't ask that. You didn't say that sound of the tree falling in the woods. Is that a phenomena? Yeah, it is. You asked about the clarity of sound, which isn't the same thing, is it? Something occurring is a phenomenon. The clarity is a quantifiable or qualifiable quality of what you're asking.
So the sound itself would be an independent variable.
Well, what's it causing? If it's the independent variable, it's the cause of the effect.
It'd be the dependent. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it'd be the dependent. I'm sorry, I got that mixed up.
So sound itself is a phenomena, you're saying. So what's the cause of sound?
Well, in
Banging pots together.
Okay, I'm going to give context for the audience's benefit because we're going to cover this on the live show. So for a while, I've been searching for that perfect normie. The dude that's totally disassociated from anything we deal with here, but exemplifies how a normie, and therefore globally, by coincidence, this guy's very into space. Not a space channel in any way, shape, or form, just a normie, just happens to like rockets and stuff, right? Along with rock music and guitar pedals. But he's lent credence to his claim that's got some scientific vernacular in it, and that would be, do valves make, what do you call them in the States, tubes? Do tubes make an amp sound better if you change them? Now, his argument is no, and he's done lots of excellent measurements, including null testing, which is the reason why it was so perfect, and I stole this and trimmed it out and asked the panel to have a listen to it before the show. So they've been preempted with this. I've gone to the effort of trimming it out and editing it slightly because there was some music in there, and I don't want to steal any of his stuff that's marketable, as opposed to the critique in this regard, with regard to the scientific method specifically. And what he's done is he's put up what is the scientific method, and he's got the usual first result off Google, which starts with asking a question. And we may get into, well, am I having roast chicken tonight? Is that putable through the method, Glenn? So this guy's called Glenn, and his channel is called Spectral Studios. I think I'm saying that right. I'll double check because I don't want to get it wrong. I do actually want to plug the guy properly because I really like his channel and I like his videos, and this isn't a dig at him. He just represents Mr. Normal in this regard. Now, in some respects, he's anything but normal. He's a rocker, so he's not exactly normal in that regard. He's quite quirky and actually very entertaining to watch as a YouTuber. Hence me thinking it's worth actually shouting out as someone that you should just go and check out, regardless of what we're going to discuss in terms of his normie views of science. But his YouTube channel is called Spectre, SPECTRE Sound Studios, all one word, SPECTRE SOUNDSTUDIOS. So that's Spectra Sound Studios, all one word. That's the name of his channel. The guy's Glenn. If you do happen to go and subscribe to him, let him know I sent you. So say Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley sent me. Love your stuff. He's very amusing. You will get suckered in and end up spending hours watching him and laughing your head off. Language warning, the guy's a rocker, so he likes to say the F word a lot. Don't take it offensively. He's just using his language in the way he does to make his points clear. And I also want to add, before we get into the live show, that I agree with him. That's the main thing. Everything he said, with the exception of his abuse of science to lend credence to what was actually very, very good and valid testing, there's nothing wrong with what he's done. And I actually agree with him. It's bullshit. Changing your vowels won't make tubes for you Americans. Won't make your amp sound tonally different. It just won't. That's not how it works. So anyway, he's done that test and shown it, but he lent credence to it unnecessarily by throwing at the scientific method and doing a null test. So it's something that I'm hoping, as I say, we will discuss on the live show. Did anybody want to add to that just before I do start up the live show?
Cause of sound is vibration.
I'd like to add to it. You made a mistake there. You said we were preempted to listen to it. That's not true. We were preempted to listen to it.
Preempted.
Yeah.
Oh, boom, boom. So the guy's dealing with preamps. Love it. Any more for any more? Then we will start.
I don't know what's going on here.
Listen, UX, what is the cause of sound and its vibration?
I didn't ask that. That's not a question I'm asking. But yeah, fine. Thank you for that. Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Brian's Logic, 10th Man, Eli, Refracted Curvature, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Morning.
Hello, Ling.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Let's see if we can get a bit more enthusiasm out of Discord, as I've literally heard nothing from them.
Discord, wake the freak up.
Somebody who's been kidnapped, muffled, gagged. That's what I heard.
Hello.
There we go.
Morning, everybody.
Brilliant. Thank you, Melby. Thank you, Rams. Much obliged. Let's get our way through housekeeping. Hey, Arwin.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to have you. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge? That would be a horizon, formerly known as Earth curve.
Terrestrial refracted. We could get it, but yeah, when we do,
Shut up. You need R for that.
Yeah, but to get that R, you can assume terrestrial refraction is kind of displacing it away from that presumed ball shape. But yeah, it's paradoxical. That's the only thing they got. Right? It's
then they
better
got nothing.
than just admitting they don't have anything ever. So
Well,
they'd
if it's
rather
paradoxical,
run into
they got
a paradox
nothing.
ditch than just admit, no, we can't get it.
A fallacy's better than nothing, eh?
Yeah.
If we could time travel,
what
we
is the
could ask
question
Al
again?
Baruni.
What was that about Alberuni?
If we could time travel, which is a concept, then we could ask Al Baruni.
Ask him about his measurement to a physical geometric sphere edge horizon. We've debunked that with the Black Swan, so I don't really know what we'd ask him. Why did you assume the horizon? Go on.
Why would we have to time travel? We can just go do it. We can go on top of a mountain, do it. 2 hours later, do it. 3 hours later, oh, the fog came in. That's all I see. So everything changes, right, Brian?
But if you could talk to them,
if you go out, if you go out there at different times, different of a day or different days, you get different size radiuses or radii, I should say. Sorry, so it can be any size. It can be any.
Sorry.
Size. Depends on when you go there.
What are we using to get these different size radiuses? Exactly.
Well, we're using a dip angle to a refracted horizon. Not really, just an apparent one.
But Al-Biruni didn't do that, though. He had no conception of terrestrial refraction. He simply tried to measure it, was off several degrees. He's basically failed in what he tried, but then the body of science into the future just accepted, like, no, it is a success because of terrestrial refraction. He didn't know it was there, right? But if you'd ask Al, he would say, "Yeah, sorry, it's."
Did he use a
failure.
sextant to determine whether?
Possibly. I mean, he got a dip angle measurement, so potentially, don't see why not.
They said an astrolabe, which is similar. So yes,
there you go.
Basically, the answer.
Astrolabe.
He would have to do a horizon dip correction anyway. So. That would kind of
careful.
But he didn't do any of that.
No. He didn't do a dip angle correction. He did a dip angle measurement. That's crucial. That measurement to the physical.
I'm saying he would have had to. He would have had to. Not what he did do. He would have had to if he was going to be using the tool correctly.
Yeah. What you're saying is to put you on the deck on the flat plane to get your first angle measurement. You correct for how high above the plane you are. Right, because that's going to skew your angle measurement. And you're saying he would have to adjust for that. But then he'd have nothing to measure. Because that adjustment is the very thing that he's presupposing as a physical sphere edge horizon that he's going to get his dip angle measurement from.
But yeah, I mean, what he actually did was pre-assume that a geometric and an astronomical horizon existed. And he also pre-assumed the radius he was supposed to be proving or measuring in the first place, because he had the maths before he ever started. So he already knew what the radius was going to be before he started.
And there's also another problem too.
He had to use the center of the globe to do it. Go on, John.
I was going to say there's another problem because terrestrial refraction was always meant to loom things with respect to the horizon. This whole moving the horizon with it is new.
Well, it's paradoxical. Arwin, you there? So it's a paradox that coincidentally was named after Arwin at one stage, but I'm going to rename it the Nathan paradox just because he's not replying. The Arwinian paradox. You can't refract the horizon with terrestrial refraction, as the terrestrial refraction is based on an R value, which is the tangent point horizon in the maths. So if you move your tangent point, it's no longer a tangent point, and therefore no longer are you capable of performing the geometry. You can't move the refracted R value with itself before you've even measured it. It's a paradox.
Yeah, and he also got an angle from the center of a globe that he already knew the radius of. That's a bit of a paradox as well, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed.
Sorry.
Nathan, it's the same trick with Eratosthenes. He pre-assumed he lived on the globe, just like Al-Biruni did. And so when the shadow in Alexandria showed 7 degrees, he applied it to a surface that curved that caused the shadow to be 7 degrees. He didn't say, I'm on a flat plane and the angle of the sun hitting the tower or that vertical pole is causing the shadow because the sun's in a different location on the flat plane, showing an angle like divergent rays would. So both of them pre-assumed they live on the ball, just like Brian said. Both of them pre-assumed the radius, and they just said, okay. So Eratosthenes said the shadow is caused by the curvature of Earth, and Al-Biruni said Okay, that horizon there in my dip, that is the geometric horizon. After that, it starts curving away, and it will block the bottom of boats and things. They're both wrong because they assumed everything.
Well, basically, they both pre-assumed two particular things, one thing each that was not real. So for Eratosthenes, if he really, because I don't know if he really did this, but if he really did pre-assume that sun rays were the sun rays were parallel, that's what he had to do to get. He had to pre-assume that there was parallel rays coming from the sun to allow him to have the curve. Other than that, all he did was measure basically a portion of a flat diameter, because that's all he could have done with the sun. If he used the real actual sun and the divergent rays that really come from it. Alberoni, he pre-assumed that the horizon was geometric. He also pre-assumed there's an astronomical horizon, but just if you want to pick one thing from each, Eratosthenes supposedly pre-assumed that sun rays were parallel, and Alberoni supposedly pre-assumed that the horizon was geometric.
They both assumed a sphere. Just to add that in, they both assumed a sphere in the first instance.
Correct.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Go on, John.
The whole thing about the sextant proof is you really have to be up on your game, because a lot of the linguistic information out there will use things like the real sun, objects, uses words like that aren't really, it lends credence to the globe, even though it's just a word you're trying to use to describe something intangible. And it's just completely covered in that language, the sextant is.
It is, but it doesn't matter, because reality shows the sun is not casting parallel rays. I mean, that's the death. The quickest death is they need the sunlight to come in parallel. And guess what? It doesn't, no matter what. I mean, reality will show you that. Now, if you want to pretend it's coming in parallel, then you can go and do all the things they're doing, but it's not coming in parallel. It's coming in divergent. Everyone knows this. Just go to Google, type in parallel sun rays, see how many pictures you get. But go on and say divergent corpuscular rays, and you go on page after page after page, because that's what everyone photographs.
Well, the parallel sun rays is something they need for a sun with an 860 or 860,000 mile diameter, or whatever the hell it is, at 93 million miles away. They need parallel sun rays for that. That's why they pre-assume parallel sun rays, because it's a heliocentric model. So they're believing there's this monstrous sun that's 93 million miles away, and we have parallel sun rays, basically because we're so small, the sun is so big, that it's so big that even at 93 million miles away, the inverse square law of light hasn't even started happening yet. So they're basically putting you on a little tiny globe Earth next to a monstrous sun, and there is no inverse square law of light after happening, simply because you're on this little thing next to this big huge thing. Just like having your eyeball next to a light bulb. Because that's the way they have every diagram they show you. They don't show you a big distance. They claim a distance, but every diagram they ever show you, they always show you, okay, let's say not the scale on it, but it's the scale for their imagination, because they have to believe that you're right next to this monstrous sun. So you don't see any divergence of light, because you're just seeing this big direct light in your face. But if you walk away from that light bulb, you'll see that the light bulb will not have parallel rays. Not that rays exist, but you know what I mean? Light.
Somebody's saying they'll only share the show if they get a distance to the sun. Any evidence of the distance to the sun? Please share the show.
Can I just add a point to what 10th was saying? Sorry, there's a bit of feedback there.
Yeah, go ahead.
With that parallel lines, the sun rays coming in divergent, how does that sort of balance with that we see train tracks converging in the distance, but we know that they're parallel. So there is still an optical phenomenon that can make parallel lines appear to be diverging, even if they, I guess we can't prove whether they are or aren't, but there's still an optical phenomenon like the convergence point, the vanishing point. Even parallel lines will appear to be diverging from that point outward.
You've answered your own question. Number one, you can't prove it. Well, it's in your description by definition, parallel. Right, that's got a meaning. So if you say they're parallel, well, we can't prove they're not. Well, you've just defined them as being parallel. You're saying, well, they appear to converge. Yeah, they do appear to converge. Those parallel lines.
Hang on. I'd like to answer that since he addressed it to me.
Go ahead, sorry.
I asked Bible literist Paula, Level Up, to give her opinion on this, and she did a fine job. Vertical things, this is Paula, and I'm quoting her. Vertical things get smaller, but horizontally, they get closer together. I'll repeat that. Vertical things get smaller, but horizontally they get closer together. A line of poles, walls, and trees does both horizontal and vertical as the distance from your eye increases. However, vertical crepuscular rays are not changing distance from your eye. Also, the crepuscular ray converge at the top rather than the bottom or center. So if you ever see footage of crepuscular rays moving over a city, time lapse, you can see it. It's not disappearing to a vanishing point. It's vertical. It's not like the railroad tracks going on forever.
Well,
and they converge to the light source actually, and you'd have to be on your back, looking straight up, for it to be railroad tracks, is what I'm trying to say.
Sorry, thanks. I thought you were finished hoist. That's why I went to come in.
No, it's okay. I'm done now.
Apologies. No, there's a big difference. The one looking at railroad tracks is like a 2D type observation. Looking at the sun is like a 3D observation, because you can see the point at where they all converge. You can't see the vanishing point of where the train tracks converge. If you rise higher, the train tracks will still converge. They just converge at a different distance. Whereas with the sun, you can rise higher, but the convergence point won't change. You know what I mean? Even though you can also watch the sun moving. So you can see the point where they all converge. You can rise as high up as you want, and you will still see the same point of convergence. That won't change. All will change is your distance from the ground. So it's not the same thing. I mean, I don't know what the sun is, right? It appears to be spherical, right? But I don't know what it is. Now, in the heliocentric belief, it is spherical, right? So the fact that their sun is spherical means that then claiming there's parallel rays coming from the sun, right? Besides the fact that they try and put you next to the sun on a small little globe, the fact that they're claiming parallel rays is absolutely ludicrous, because a spherical light can never have parallel rays, because everything is, all the light, let's say that's coming from that sphere or shape, like a light bulb, goes in all directions.
Hey, Chocolate.
Hey, Nathan, I'm posting, as soon as it lets me.
Morning, guys.
Hey, Chocolate.
Hey, Chocolate.
Okay. Hang on, I gotta do this.
Yo.
The parallel thing, I don't think that's fully their claim. I think they're claiming like a 0.5 divergence that's almost parallel.
Yeah, but
almost parallel.
Yeah, that's the thing.
What's that talking about?
Mm-hmm. Parallel sun rays. This 0.5 thing, that's a mathematical thing. When they want to show you a depiction of the light from their sun, they'll show you all parallel rays. There'll be no convergence in any diagram or anything else. So this 0.5 thing is only like a kind of a get-out clause for them. You know, that kind of way, that's all it is. It doesn't mean anything. I've heard that being stated a load of times. So almost parallel is not parallel. And almost parallel changes everything mathematically for them, but they don't really realize that.
Nathan, I'm going to post it. I had to reboot my phone, and I'll let you know. I got a perfect picture for this. But what Brian is saying is true. They say, if you look at what they say about Eratosthenes, he assumed the Earth's a sphere and light because of a vast distance away is coming in parallel. That's why in the Nautical Almanac, all the predetermined readings are coming from the center of the Earth. Okay, it's all pre-calculated because light is assumed to come in parallel. You can't get that central angle to give the same corresponding angle on the curved surface if it wasn't. And so they play so many games with you. So yeah, they do assume it's parallel. Forget that 0.5 crap.
Yeah, and what's 0.5, let's just say, across from the equator to the north and south of their globe? What would 0.5 end up being? Would it be parallel? No, because it's not parallel. So they're claiming parallel, and they're also claiming it's not really parallel. It's another contradiction of a model that's full of contradictions.
Well, I think the 0.5 has to represent the apparent size of the sun and like the distance across, so that one ray on the right side of the sun wouldn't be parallel with a ray on the left side of the sun. But this is all assuming a geometric horizon, and we live on a sphere, and the sun's 93 million miles away, or a really far distance.
So
Adam said it the best. Adam said when a photon leaves a round sun, a round-shaped sun, it's moving in all directions.
But what John just said of your claim is them claiming that they only actually have an angular size measurement of the sun. That's like an admission, isn't it, when you think about it? Because they're using the angular size of the sun within that, are they not? Because I've heard them do this before. I've had that argument with Rumpus briefly before. You know, their admission is they only actually have an angular size like everyone else.
Okay. All right, Nathan. First one's coming over.
Again?
First one's coming over, first picture. Okay, you can see that picture. That's taken from the sky. You're not even on the Earth for that picture, right?
No, it's not loaded yet. Just hold on.
All right, you tell me when it is. I'm sending another one as well.
Okay, I've got it. It's a sun above the clouds sort of thing. Is that the one?
Where's the photograph being taken from?
Above the clouds. Didn't I just say that?
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying to the audience. Okay, this isn't the guy on the Earth. This is the guy in the air taking the picture, right? Somewhere up high. And you can see the vertical rays. Second one came over.
Hasn't worked yet. Oh, there we go. Yep.
All right, so this one basically, if you're lying on your back, looking straight up, they're converging to the sun. They're coming divergent and converging back to the source. If it was parallel, it wouldn't be doing that. The sun's not 93 million miles away. That's the point.
Well, if we had parallel rays from a monstrous sun, and the sun was so big that we ended up with parallel rays, then any side of a globe that would be turned towards that sun, right, and these rays are coming from 93 million miles away, any side would be fully lit from top to bottom. Like, there would be no difference in a couple of thousand miles. The whole lot on any side that's tilted towards the globe or towards the sun would be lit from top to bottom. So what would happen in their model is there would be summertime in the southern summer and winter time in the northern summer for everywhere. You know, if you want to see it that way, because they all they try and claim there's it's to do with angle. There is no angle. It's parallel rays that's coming. Like parallel rays suggest, right? They claim actually by claiming parallel rays, you're claiming that the sun's light hasn't even started. That the infrared spiral of light hasn't even affected the light coming to the globe out yet. So that means the whole one, whatever side is in daylight, the whole lot of that will be in equal daylight. There will be no part of the Arctic that will be dark in the northern summer or northern winter or anything like that. There won't be that. There'll be a summer in December or January, and there'll be a winter in June, July. You know, that's the way it'll be. There is no other way for that to work.
Nathan, I got one last picture for you, and I'll be done. Let me know when you got it up.
Yep. Oh,
Okay,
baby.
so-
Whose is that? Who made that sound? It was cute, whoever it was.
All right, so
That was mine, sorry.
Good one. So this last picture here, as the sun is setting or rising, I don't know, but the whole point is you see the rays that are coming across the sky towards the top of the picture, but then you see the rays below the sun going divergent. This happens because the photons leaving the sun go in all directions. And what the ballers do is they take a picture of a very small part of those rays that are coming to the top of the picture. And they say, see, it's parallel. And then when you back away and show the whole picture like we see here, oh my gosh, they're converging. They're coming from the sun and diverging. And at the same time, they're diverging straight down and sideways in this picture. Because, as Adam said, a photon leaving the sun, which is a round body, or whatever it is, but it's round, circular, is going to move in all directions. It's not going to be parallel. And it's right here. And so what they'll do is they'll cheat, and they'll take a picture and crop out a section there on the top of the blue sky and say, see, it's parallel. And you say, well, let me see the whole picture. Oh, well, why is it converging back to the sun? And why is there the vertical divergent rays as well in this picture? They just lie.
Yeah, that's all they ever do.
I think
Yeah,
I think that was the best answer is that horizontal versus vertical divergence. The vertical would remain parallel, as you said, and we still see the vertical diverging. So
well, you wouldn't
Yeah,
have
that's
a 3D.
kudos to
Sorry.
that's kudos to Paula at Bible Literist and Level Up. Thank you, Paula.
You wouldn't have any 3D. You wouldn't be able to assert. Sorry.
You're
You wouldn't be able to assert. I coughed. I had to go on mute for a second. You wouldn't be able to identify a source with parallel. You know what I mean? I put it this way. What is the cause of heat? I'm asking John this if he's available. He may not because he's the kids. But what is the cause of heat on the globe model?
Radiation from the sun.
Yeah. So what heats up the Earth?
excitation.
Yeah, but what's heating the Earth? Is it the sun's light onto the surface of the Earth?
Yes.
Yes, it's the energy causing excitation in the molecules, and then that excitation is registered as heat.
Yeah, but officially what causes heat on the Earth? It's the sun's light onto the Earth, heating the Earth. This is what they say, heating the Earth's surface, and the Earth's surface then in turn heats the gases, right? This is the claim, right? So if you're 3 million miles further, right, from these rays, these parallel rays that are hitting all of the Earth equally, because they're parallel, so that means they have to be hitting the Earth equally at all points. Not as if they just hit one section, they have to be able to hit it all equally. So if you're 3 million miles further away from that, then that means you have to be colder, because you're further from the source of the heat. or what is causing the heat, let's just say. So,
What do you mean? You don't ever walk away from your oven and it feels hotter?
yeah,
That's literally what they're telling you.
yeah.
You turn to an angle and then you get hotter when you stand near your oven.
Yeah.
Yeah, angles create heat. Yeah, in their belief. Yeah, in their claim, angles create heat because you're hot.
So they'll say the words. So they'll say the words. The sun's atmosphere is hotter than the sun's surface. Which, I mean, it's all gas, so beats me. Don't ask me.
Well, it's a second law of thermodynamics violation. This has been covered a couple of times on a few of Quantum Eraser's presentations. So he uses an analogy. You buy a bonfire, and you go, oh, it's a bit hot. I'm just going to step back a few steps. So you step back 10 feet, and because you've moved away from it, you spontaneously combust.
No! It's the most ridiculous thing in the world.
No.
Yeah, proximity to heat source. You know, in the real world, that matters.
You want me to
What
put?
about-
I mean, that
What
makes
about
sense. That
parallel
makes sense
shadows?
when, in January when there's, 6 feet of snow on the ground. That's when we're closest to the sun in New York, But that's absolutely makes sense.
But what about parallel? Actually, no. I'm gonna let that point stand. No, that's a pretty good point.
Right, 10th. I've got Paula's comment up. Did you want to read it? And then I haven't read it. I just stuck it straight up.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. And I think was it who was it the one that responded? Eric? Was it Eric who responded to it? I can't remember.
I don't know the context. Don't lean on me for it.
All right, no problem. Anyway, this is the actual text she sent me. Vertical things get smaller, but horizontally they get closer together. A line of poles, walls, trees does both horizontal and vertical as the distance from your eye increases. However, vertical corpuscular rays are not changing distance from your eye. Also, the corpuscular rays converge at the top rather than the bottom or center.
Well, could I just say,
But I just-
stand at the base?
I just want to challenge
Of-
that.
Hold
in
on,
terms
Brian.
of-
That was directed towards Eric. Can I just get a
sorry.
response from him? Sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
sorry, it's solar speed.
Sorry, I never
I'm
asked
sorry.
any-
It wasn't
I
even
never
Eric.
asked
Well, then no. Go ahead, Brian.
That's so large.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to state, if you were in, let's say, where Eli is, a best example in the world, Manhattan, and Eli stands at the base of a skyscraper and looks straight up, will the skyscrapers at either side of the skyscraper, let's say a horizontal skyscraper, will the lines appear to go in the way, or will they appear to go out the way if you're looking up at a skyscraper?
Oh, that's a new one. In the way. Oh, I love it. Oh, I've got a slight tingle.
Yeah, will they go in the way or out the way? The lines at the side of the lines of the skyscraper at the side you're looking up, will they appear to go out or in the way? Now remember, the top of that skyscraper has a diameter much wider than you. So if the lines are going out the way as you look up, and if you look at animation, they always show it that way. Animation shows it that way because that's what we see with perspective, isn't it? Then it would be impossible if there was parallel sun rays, then they would appear to all be meeting off out away from us, not meeting at a point inward. You understand what I mean?
Yes. They claim they're running parallel to us, and they're not. They wouldn't look the way they were if they did.
Yeah, if you take like the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center, they had lines of steel running right up through them. Any photographs that are seen, if anyone remembers seeing photographs of people taking photographs from the base of that, any of those two towers, straight up, the lines went out the way. But they weren't, they were in reality parallel.
Okay, have we done this enough? Because we're going to forgo the rest of the housekeeping so we can discuss something that I've literally titled the live show, which is the science of Glenn. So is there anything else anyone wants to get out of the way with a desperate urgency before I move on to this?
Just one thing.
Okay.
In terms of the definition that 10th wrote, when we talk about on the vertical height, it's getting shorter, but on the horizontal height, it's getting closer together. I see those as almost the same phenomenon, that there's a shortening occurring. So whether they're getting closer together or the two ends of the pole are getting closer together, it's technically still a convergence occurring on both the horizontal and the vertical. Because if that pole was centered on your field of view, it would get equally distant, or it would get shorter on equal ends until eventually it meets the vanishing point.
I'm not sure if I follow, but I want to comment in case I heard it the way my ears picked up on it.
Okay, keep it
When
brief.
I look at I will. When I look at divergent rays, they don't vanish into the horizon. They're right in front of me, and the sun is moving. And you could, in the time-lapse photography, if you go time-lapse corpuscular rays, you'll see it there. It's not the horizontal; it's more of a vertical, and it's right there in front of you. And so you'd have to be lying on your back and then looking at it straight up to see it converge back to the sun. And that would resemble the horizontal. So since they're coming in vertically, it's not the same as train tracks going horizontally into the horizon, vanishing at a point because of perspective. That's it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just saying, in terms of that definition that you read, if the vertical is getting shorter, but the horizontal is getting closer together, I see those as the same. They're both approaching a convergence point eventually. But the divergent rays that are vertical from the sun, like how you just described it, that doesn't almost fit with the same idea of poles shrinking into a vanishing point.
Any chance someone can read out Paula's comment? If not, I will. No, I see the distinction as the horizontal does not change height. Not sure if that's clearer. Thank you very much, Paula. Level up in the chat in case anyone wants to know who Paula is. Okay, is that it? Have we rounded that out enough? I'll take that as a yes. Excellent. So, in the pre-show we discussed this a little tiny bit, not much, but I preemptively sent a slightly edited down version of this video. So before we get into it, I'm going to ask a few things of my subscriber base. So this guy's channel is called Spectra Sound Studios, and I want you to go and subscribe today. If you do subscribe, let him know. Say, hey Glenn, Nathan Oakley sent me, love your channel. And before we get into the science of Glenn, I'm going to say a few things before we do. The first is that I agree with what he is saying. In other words, what he's putting down, I am definitely picking up, with the exception of his utilization of the scientific method. Now, it's unfortunate for Glenn, but I've been looking for this for a while. So I've had a few that came close where there was a guy that was doing it with tyres. That's why I've mentioned tyres a few times, in case anyone was wondering. It's like, there was a dude whose name won't get mentioned, not going to get named and shamed on this occasion because it's Glenn that's getting it in the neck. Sorry, Glenn. I love you, man. Also, fuck you, Glenn. Right? So, Glenn has taken a very good test to show that valves, what we call valves in the UK, you call tubes in the States, don't make a difference to amplification when you're miking up guitars and so on and so forth. So that's the general sentiment of what he's trying to put down so his audience understands where to not waste their money. And I completely agree with that sentiment. The problem is that he's become, or is going to be about to become, my example of how science has been hijacked by normies, and the understanding is used to lend credence to just so stories, even if they're true. In this case, I agree with the actual story that's being told and the methodology that's used. Now, you're going to hear certain terms that we're going to stop and potentially discuss. I will leave all of your lines open, so if you can mute just while it's playing, if you do feel the need to, you must speak up, then you can. That's why I'll leave all your lines open so you can interrupt, but I'd prefer you are just on mute just so we don't have audio chaos while it's playing. It's about 3 and a bit minutes long. Like I say, I'll probably interject at various different stages as well, but I want to give the preamble that, number one, I like this guy, so under no circumstances go and give the guy shit. I don't want that to be why this is happening. He's just unfortunate enough to be in a position where he's concisely summarised what he describes as the scientific method, and then he does what is brilliant for me because it's legitimate in terms of what it's doing. So I'm not actually disagreeing with him in terms of what he's putting down. So hopefully if you went and listened to this video, you'd go, oh, okay, I actually agree with you. Great. But doesn't make what he says legitimate in terms of the scientific method, which is what we focus on here, coincidentally. Hence, that's why Glenn's landed himself in this position. Now, I'll also say that I have left him a fair few comments in the last few days, and I know this guy is very heavily focused on comments. So therefore, hopefully he's already at least mildly aware that, given that he's probably got thousands of comments a day, maybe not, but at least mildly aware that, you know, I'm going to be doing something. And then when I saw this, I was like, this is just what I need, Glenn. Thank you very much. Brilliant. None of what you do here is science. So, you know, I'm going to be using you as an example on my show. I doubt he's got that. He's probably asleep when I've sent it. But nevertheless, you know, like I say, the reason I'm giving all these disclaimers is because I like the guy. I agree with what he's saying. And I'm just using him as an example how normies will accept when astrophysicists do the same thing, because it's basically brainwashed into us all that you lend credence when you've got words like null or experiment, or you just claim you're doing the entirety of the scientific method when you're not doing any such thing. So if everyone's a moot, we'll, without further ado, play this video through. Like I say, feel free to interject if there's something that you must pipe up about.
Preamp tubes tend to last far longer than power tubes and can even last the lifetime of your amp as long as they don't go microphonic. Well, I just happen to have a box full of these things, as over the last couple of decades I've both swapped out preamp and power tubes in my failed quest for the perfect tone. But for this video, instead of randomly changing out tubes and saying, wow, what a difference, I thought we'd try something different. We're going to use the scientific method because we've all heard the same hypothesis. Changing tubes in a guitar amp will affect the overall sound. Now, the test I've created will isolate the tube variable while eliminating all the rest. I've seen other tube swap videos, but
So at this stage, are we all clear that the guy's claiming in no uncertain terms that he's going to be using the scientific method? We all on board so far with what's been claimed? Yes, Nathan, we all totally get why you're using this guy.
I'm on board. I'm on board.
Yep.
I'm on board.
Okie dokie, we'll play on.
I've got no way of telling if a microphone has been bumped in between recordings, because moving a mic even a few millimeters on a cabinet will have a huge effect on the tone. And it's usually a guy playing new takes into an amp, so there's no way of telling if the mic gain has been turned up or down or the amp settings have been changed. There's too many variables. So to get around that, we're going to be using three critical pieces of equipment. First,
Okay, so he's got the whole shebang, right? He's got his suppositions, he's got his variables, he's got his scientific method. We're all cool, right? So now we're going to see what actually transpires in terms of his quote-unquote test.
a signal our reamp box so we get exactly the same performance every time. The amp itself will be outputting into a 2-notes captor X so we can eliminate the cabinet and microphone variable. Because this test is going to be performed over several days, the risk of bumping a microphone and therefore ruining the test is too great. Instead, the captor is seen by the amp as a speaker and it will react in the same manner. And I'll be able to use an impulse response to achieve the exact same speaker mic combo every single time. And last, we're going to be going into a Neve 1073 OPX preamp, which has stepped gain in 1 dB increments for precisely repeatable results. Needless to say, none of the amp settings are going to be changed either. Now we're going to test both preamp and power amp tubes and use 4 different amps so we can get a broad picture of what's happening. The one thing I won't be doing are bias adjustments on any of the amp's power sections. Changing how hot the power tubes run will have an effect on the amp's output level as well as the life of the tubes. I'm not challenging that.
Okay, so any comments so far?
I'm like in and out because I'm at work and I'm trying to pay attention, but So this guy, he's trying to figure out something with his amp, but you said he's using the scientific method. Is he asserting this is science? I'm slightly confused.
Yes, correct. So far, what has happened is he has claims that valves make amps sound better. That's the claim by guitarists. So he's saying, right, we're going to settle this by using something that's empirical. That would be the scientific method. So let's shut you up once and for all. We're going to science this. Here's what the scientific method is. He threw it up on screen.
Oh, okay.
Well, what I see right away is that the amplifier and tubes is not a natural thing in the world that I find. It's a man-made thing, so it has to be caused because of that. So it doesn't fall into the natural world in the scientific method for cause and effect.
Perfect.
The sound is the phenomenon, not...
Whether it sounds better or not is a subjective thing, isn't it? I mean...
That's funny. I went through the forest the other day, and I didn't see an amp or tubes in nature.
Okay, so tense
sound. You hear sound all the time.
Hold on.
Yeah, but
yes,
not
you
through
hear
amps and tubes.
We're not trying to establish the cause of sound, though, are we? So when you say we hear sound all the time, you're going to juxtapose the fact that we hear sound and make that the dependent variable? Are we trying to figure out the cause of sound, if sound is the dependent variable? I wanted to get to this afterwards, actually, John. I want to start with 10th. Is that okay? Can you hold that thought?
Yeah, that's fine.
So 10th was first, and 10th identified correctly the first problem that we've got here when we're talking about science. So go ahead, 10th, reiterate it again, if you would.
Yeah, it's like anything man-made is going to have some kind of effect, but it's man-made. We already know why the effect exists because man made it. Now, if you're going to study the natural world and see a phenomenon and a dependent variable that's naturally in the world, and you say, well, I wonder why that is. Well, it's not man-made. It's in nature. And then you're going to do the scientific method on that to see the cause of that effect. I mean, that's what I've been taught. That's what I've been reading from all the QE's posts.
Perfect. So in his description of the scientific method, the first thing it says is ask a question, which is incorrect, because you can ask a question about whether or not you're going to have roast chicken tonight, and that won't fall into the scientific method. However, his step 3 on his list was formulate hypothesis. Well, what's a hypothesis in science? It's a prediction. The prediction of a cause and effect relationship that you're trying to figure out. Well, what's the effect? Well, it's something that you observe in nature. That'd be not man-made devices. You already know what the cause is. Man made them. So there's no cause and effect relationships, IV-DB relationships in science when it comes to man-made things. You already know what the cause of them is. That'd be a man making them. Now, again, I'll stress at this point that lending validity via measurements, and in this case null, which I think I might have actually just played over, we'll see what he says next, is perfectly acceptable. Nothing wrong with doing that. But a null, in scientific terms, is the antithesis of your cause and effect relationship predicted in the alternative hypothesis. If A, then B, alternative hypothesis. If A, not B, null hypothesis. I'm getting ahead of myself. John, go ahead, if you can make your point again, and then we can move on to nulls. Where? Clearly not. We'll move on with this and we'll come back to John's point because it does follow nicely with the null point, which is going to be made in a moment.
Same type but different brand will make. And to hear any difference at all, we'll run null tests on the tracks. That's when you have 2 like tracks of audio, flip the polarity on one, and if they're the same, they'll cancel each other out. What remains is how much of a change is being made. Last summer, we put the Clark Technic up against a real Pultec, and it failed the null test miserably.
Okay, so are we all clear? He gave a very good description of what a null test is. Does everybody understand what his null test is? Yeah, we all understand. It was really clear. Okay, fine. So what you're going to do is you're going to take 2 signals of information. You're going to invert one of them and then drop them on top of each other. Now, anything that's left over between those two signals doesn't null. It's residual, it's left over. You can then hear it played through after they've been nulled, and that's the difference that you're left with. Now, if something nulls perfectly, you get silence at the end of that process, showing that there's no difference in those two signals, because they null each other out. When you invert one of them, it cancels the other. Anything that's not cancelled means it's not in perfectly mirror image of the other. That's what a null test does. Now, that is very different to a null in the hypothesis as labelled in his scientific method. A scientific method also has a null as part of the hypothesis. If A, presumed cause of an effect you're studying, not B, it doesn't cause the effect you're studying, that's a null in a hypothesis. A supposition of cause yet to be validated, or scientific prediction, aka hypothesis. So a null, inverting signals, running them together to see what's left over or is a residual signal, is not the same as a null in a scientific prediction, aka hypothesis. Anything anybody wants to add at this stage?
Well, wouldn't that take the subjective, his nullification of the sound waves, wouldn't that take the subjectivity out of the clarity of what he's testing?
Oh, there's nothing wrong with doing a null test. In fact, I highly commend him. So many engineers that talk so much bullshit based on what they're listening to with their auditory memory of about 3 seconds. Null test, there it is. That's what's residual. Very good. Love it. Love it, Glenn. Absolutely wicked. Wish more people did null tests. Not the same as a null in a scientific prediction, though.
Right, like I said, I don't think he knew what he was doing. I don't think he's doing. It's hard to say. I think he hit a straight blow with a bent stick, is what I believe.
On the contrary, I think he knows exactly what he's doing and is an extremely experienced, skilled engineer who understands the principles of sound enough to know when you can show, empirically, a difference by way of a null test and the residual left over when you invert a signal. I think that's genius. I wish more did it. But it's not science. That's the point I'm making.
It's just not science.
Exactly.
Well,
I was going to say, like, it sounds like the technique he's using, the method he's using, like, from what I hear, like, he's got his variables, he knows what he's trying to do. Like, I don't see anything wrong with the method except for the fact that he's asserting this is science. That's the only thing I'm like, I'm not sure about that, but yeah, all right.
Yeah, inverting a signal and measuring the residual is a measurement. It's maths. Nothing wrong with maths. Brilliant. Love it, Glenn. It's just not science.
This is just calibration.
Yeah. Well, you could call it calibration. It's null testing, but regardless of the title it gets, there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's good. Why I've picked this, it's brilliant because I can praise the guy all day long about what he's doing with audio, because seldom do you see it. There's so many bullshitting audio reviewers out there that will spend all day describing how they sound when you've changed something and done it a day later, and it's like, you could move your head 2 inches and change the sound. Show me an actual measurement. Show me a null test. And they don't do it. They just bullshit about what they're talking about. Now, the reason this is a good example is because he's actually got credence to lend to what he says, but he's over-egged the pudding. He's added credence with the words of science, even throwing up the scientific method when it wasn't required. He didn't need to add that credence to what he did. He was already leagues ahead of everybody else in that regard, I can absolutely assure you. I've watched enough of these types of videos to know this guy's top of his game. So, no, he's perfectly good and well served in what he's doing, and I'm grateful that he does. Sets the example, in fact. He's just over-egged the pudding. Like I say, didn't need to claim it was science. Just because it's got some of the words in there, right? Variables, null. Ooh, it sounds a lot like science, doesn't it? Any more? We're going to continue. There's a little bit more.
Well, it's like, when you hear people talk about something's been scientifically tested or something will be marketed as scientifically tested, and it's the same sort of thing.
Exactly. We're having the wool pulled over our eyes in many different respects, and through ignorance, many people will basically validate that bullshit process by doing it themselves to lend credence to their own bullshit. Now, in this case, this guy's bullshit's actually perfectly valid bullshit. It's good. There's nothing. He's not polishing up turds when he says what he says. He's actually done this stuff, right? So there was no need to add this extra credence. Useful for me, because I don't have to put him down and say what he's saying is wrong, because he's, I don't know, punting smoke and mirrors cables or whatever, with no actual measurements to back them. So far from it, I can say, no, good job, keep it up, while saying, nah, but it's not science. Anyway, let's play on.
All right, first up, the Joyo Zombie, a single tube in the preamp and a solid state power section. I've got several different 12AX7 tubes, plus a 12AT7 and a 12AY7. Let's hear what happens. Very little. And that becomes quite apparent when we run the null test. Tell you what, let's run a clip with 3 different sets of tubes in it and see what happens. And I can hear a difference. Yet these never seem to be backed up by any kind of A-B comparison, and certainly not where the guitar is reamped. Full disclosure, I don't have any agenda with this video other than to see what's really going on with tubes. Nobody is sponsoring this video. Tubes.
Okay, doke, so that's pretty much it. So hopefully we're all on top of why this has been used, why Glenn. Shout out to you, my friend. I will stick a link in the comment section and pin it once this live stream's over. And advise people again to go and subscribe. If you do go and subscribe to Spectra Studios, please let him know that I sent you. Say, Nathan Oakley sent me. Because hopefully he'll then check this out. And I think he's a good guy. I don't want anybody to bash him in any way, shape or sound. So if you do go and visit Spectra Sound Studios, all one word, SpectraSoundStudios. Check him out. Say, Glenn, hi, how you doing? Love your channel. Nathan Oakley sent me. Really enjoying your stuff. But he covers metal, he covers audio engineering, covers mics, does gear reviews, reads out very funny comments, talks about how idiot musicians do idiotic things. It's just funny. I love the guy anyway. I think Glenn's great. But also, fuck you, Glenn. It's not science. Hope you appreciate me making a video about you. I'm sure I'll get
Nathan,
you over the million so you can get your amp given away. But yeah, please subscribe to Glenn. Go ahead, whoever that was.
Me, Adam Aiken wants you to let him in.
oh, important stuff. Adam.
I'd like to know, when can you say that something's been scientifically verified or scientifically tested?
Perfect. Couldn't have asked for better timing. So once you have observed natural phenomena, that would be step 1 of the method. Formulated a hypothesis which establishes your presumed cause of the effect in the alternative, if A then B, and the antithesis, that would be the null hypothesis, if A not B, and all of the control variables, otherwise known as constant variables. And then you actualize your hypothesis, otherwise known as an experiment. That has to be done systematically, i.e. more than once. Once you have systematically validated the alternative, that would be your presumed cause of an effect, you have then scienced the shit out of it, if you so wish.
So testing what speaker sounds better or what washing liquid works better is not a scientific test.
Well, that was my whole... I watched the vid, Nathan, when you sent it, and the whole supposition at the start would be that his dependent variable is it's sounding better. He then he uses that null thing to demonstrate a way of things sounding better, but his whole dependent variable is primarily subjective, therefore can't be. So
well, he's got a further problem to that, actually. He's testing the null. He's breaking the cardinal rule. You never test the null in an experiment. So I say you've got a null at the antithesis of your prediction, if A then B. You're not testing the null. And his hypothesis, if you want to call it, is there's no difference. It doesn't make a change. So let's go forth and test the null that nothing happens. So he doesn't even have a phenomena. Even though the phenomena he doesn't have is man-made. So it's a clusterfuck.
Well, isn't he He's just doing an inverse of the scientific method. He's testing the alternative of someone else's supposition.
Yes, that's correct. Someone else has the supposition that valves cause better sound, and he's testing the null. Right, exactly.
No, he's testing their alternative.
Oh, what you're saying is he's jumping in as devil's advocate and saying, fine, okay, I'll tolerate that. So he's introducing the if A valves, then B better sound as his bastardized so-called hypothesis. Yeah, okay, I'll tolerate that.
Yeah, I don't think he knows what he's doing. I don't think he understands science at all. But I think there is science to be had in what he's done.
What, in the sound you get out? By the way, cool gimbal, man. Moving the mic around on a remote control gimbal to show the difference on a sound it produces when you're miking up a cab. That was fucking epic. I'm sorry, but that was the coolest thing ever.
It just sounds like he's doing more troubleshooting than science.
Correct. So what's the naturally observed phenomena there, John, then? We're going to go back to sound.
The sound, yeah.
So we try to... So DV, dependent variable, naturally observed phenomena is going to be sound. So we're going to... In this removing and changing valves, we're trying to figure out the cause of sound, John.
Quality of sound.
Don't help him out.
Yeah, I would go with that.
Where you go with that? He's not trying to figure out the cause of sound.
Not the cause. Well, the cause of the quality of the sound.
The cause of the quality. That sounds distinctly qualitative. Strangely enough. Wow, that leaves me slightly screwed for the end of the show. Help! Adam.
Well, I ain't got vicious yet. It's going to get worse, but you can keep going.
Yeah,
I don't want to pretend it's science, but what he is doing is taking empiricism to improve his technology, and there's nothing wrong with that because there's a lot to be gained, as you can see, by being empirical in the way you approach things. It helps him reach his conclusion of what sounds better quicker, and it also gives him data to validate it in his mind why it sounds better. It's more like a psychology experiment than anything, this, if you were going to put it in a box in terms of what he's actually doing, because he's not science.
Well, isn't he doing engineering, the refining of something?
There's a way in which he could science what you were saying, which is just to look at how resonance patterns form through different tubes. I don't understand it, but just for example, you could examine how a wave pattern of the sound is preserved through different types of equipment, or the shapes of it, and you could then determine the best shape for preservation of sound things, of a sound wave. But what you can't do is determine what sound is, or fundamentally what he's doing, determine what sounds best, because like I say, that's subjective from the beginning.
Isn't that what his nullification instrument does, though?
We'll get into it in the after show. So with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Again, if you go and subscribe to Glenn on Spectra Sound Studios, make sure you say Nathan Oakley sent me, and fuck you, Glenn. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
I mean, it is knowledge. They are figuring things out, and there is some practicality to it. But I think the heliocentric people, they've put us in this kind of corner where we have to tell people, no, what you're doing isn't science, because what it actually is, no, you think that people have hypothesis in the way of, well, that thing is caused by this thing. And there's only one method for establishing that, as far as I know, when you're dealing with the natural world and you're trying to figure out what caused this natural phenomena I'm looking at. That's a very specific statement when you're making a hypothesis, the prediction as to how the independent variable will affect the dependent variable. The only reason you're doing this is because you asked what caused the thing I'm looking at. Everything outside of that is everything outside of that. But people always conflate things, and they I'm a scientist. I'm doing a test because I'm watching someone tie my shoe. You know,
I just had that like 10 minutes ago. Somebody is trying to troubleshoot a component at my job, and he's like, "Oh, I'm doing this experiment to try to see which one works." And I said, I perked my ears up like, "Oh, okay, experiment." And then somebody else came in, the same guy actually, that walked away from me and put his fingers in his ears and said "la la la" when I was talking about flat Earth. So he says, "Oh, so we do an experiment like scientists," and I said, well, all of that. No, this is science. This is technology. Thanks. He just looked at me like, "Oh boy, here we go." Like, yep. So I just had to do that. Just put somebody on like, yeah, this is not science. This is technology. So,
Natural examiner, observe, please.
Yeah, it's implied. I mean, not every circumstance will have that be the case, because you can say I'm experimenting with my BMX on these ramps, and colloquially that's fine, right? But contextually, when you're talking about technology, the implication is, no, I'm actually doing an experiment. It's like, oh, really? Are you? No, you're just doing a bit of testing. You're measuring. That's maths. I just want to read out, if Adam's still around, I want to read out this, when I was like, help, Adam, because of the way this is worded, I'm going to read out what Sleeping Warrior says. Just, I want your reaction to this, Adam. You there?
Yeah, go on.
I'm going to read it out word for word. Sleeping Warrior. The quality of the sound isn't qualitative. Nathan Oakley. It's quantitative. So let me get this straight, Sleeping Warrior. The quality isn't qualitative. Oh, right. That quality isn't qualitative. Excellent.
What? He's right, though, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely, he's correct. But as soon as I started saying it, right, I'm talking about the quality of its change, right, in terms of whether or not you varied your IV and caused your DV. But yet he's talking in a different word. It's not being equivocated. It's just the same word. Quality of sound, right? So suddenly you go, oh, God, I didn't recognise this slight verbiage problem that I'd got here before I put this out. I mean, it's just a funny, interesting one, isn't it?
It's like what Adam said. The quality he's talking about is subjective.
Yeah, exactly.
And he uses the null method, whatever he does, to quantify it.
Null test. It's just called a null test.
Yeah, null test, yeah.
I love the null test. I could kiss the guy's feet for being out there singing its praises. It's normally like, don't get me wrong, good engineers know what a null test is, and they'd be rolling their eyes now. But there's plenty of crap engineers and musicians out there that haven't got the vaguest clue. And moreover, in the field of sound, and this is what I was plagued with when I was a rep, it's people in domestic audio as opposed to pro audio, and they'll all talk the most benign crap you've ever heard. They'll just make stuff up, totally subjective, and it just drives you mad when there are actually testing processes that can show these differences really easily, null testing being one of them. So he's out there doing that and saying, nah, if you want to say this is better than that, let's see it measured as better, and how, and why, or what frequency. And you go, yeah, man, I'd want to see that too. So I'm all for people like that, and that's why he's a perfect example. Because hopefully, if he was watching that, he'd be like, he's bigging me up, he's singing my praises, and he's agreeing with me. He's just having a little jab. Plus, there's 50% of his audience hate him because they've gone out and they've purchased a piece of gear that's a piece of shit. And he's reviewing it going, this is a real piece of shit. And they're like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? So he gets a lot of that. So this is kind of the same thing. It's a kind of a jab between his ribs. But by also saying, you know, I like your stuff. I want to send people your way. I want people to also appreciate what a good laugh you are. Because he is. And I want to appreciate how good you are at your job as well. Because he is.
But he's wrong.
He overate the pudding. That's why it's so perfect. He's not wrong. He's not made a mess of the cake. He's just over-egged it.
He's not correct enough, would maybe be a good way to state it.
Could you stop with the food puns? I'm hungry right now.
Yeah.
Okay. He added extra credence where none was required. If I run a tape measure down a piece of wood and say it's a metre long, I don't then need to go, because I've followed the scientific method, my metre measurement has more credence. There's no need.
Well, what I'd say about the guy is that when it came to what he thought he was doing science, and when it came to attempting to do science, at least he tried what he thought was the scientific method, as opposed to completely ignoring that which he knows as the scientific method, even though it's not the correct formulation of it, and it's not the correct circumstance to use it. At least he was trying to do it.
I'm glad you've said that.
Our opposition don't even try.
Yeah, I'm glad you've said that. Perfect segue. Wrong. You ever heard the phrase, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing?
Yes.
Right. Well, that's why I've brought this up in the first place. I was just waiting for that segue, Brian. Well, no. We have the exact same hijacking of the terminology, hypothesis, theory, experiment. All of those are used in the same way when lending credence to bullshit just so stories about sky vacuum, about gravity, about all sorts of other things that previously were labelled as being proven by, quote, the body of science. It's like, okay, if it's science, it's going to have gone through the method, because the definition of pseudoscience is something claimed to be science that hasn't been through the method. Now, that's a big problem if you've got something legit, like a null test. Totally legit, perfectly valid. But what? It's been claimed as science now, hasn't it, Glenn? Now, that's why it's a problem. Because, all right, well, he's had a go. At least he had an attempt. Yeah, but now it's pseudoscience. I can legitimately invalidate every word of his presentation. I'm not going to. I will hypothetically invalidate every single word by saying every word that he claimed met the definition of pseudoscience. What's pseudoscience? Well, it's a claim of scientific validity that has not been through the scientific method. He claimed, with the method on screen, that that's what he was doing. Where's his alternative and null hypothesis, independent, dependent, and control variables? Where's the systematic experimentation, actualization of the hypothesis? Where's the phenomena? Oh, we didn't have any of that then. So it definitely meets the definition of pseudoscience then, Glenn. Oh dear, because everything you said was true, wasn't it, Glenn? Yeah, I can just slap it down in an instance as pseudoscience because you didn't follow the method. But you claimed it, didn't you? So why would you sacrifice all of your understanding and good knowledge and measurements in favour of extra credibility by using the words of science when you didn't really have them? Because now it's all pseudoscience, Glenn. Don't listen to Glenn. It was all pseudoscience. Look, he said he had the method. He didn't follow. He didn't have a hypothesis. Yeah, pseudoscience, mate. Crying shame when it's all legit.
Nathan.
Adam, do you want to go? I go after you.
It's just a quick point. You just said that in the video. That was the odd thing. It's not like he didn't put up the method, listing all the points in the processes required within it. That was the thing I did find odd, that little flash. But he's citing it. He's saying, I've done this method when you put that up. And that's why when I'm first listening to the video, I'm waiting for him to process it. Look, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And he never did. So So that's the odd thing, just to state science, think you've done a little bit because you've done that null test thing, and think that then complies with what you've actually listed. That's the pseudoscience side to me. He clearly knows what the requirements were, and he's not met them, but he claims science.
Well, what I would say in his defense, right, is that he's not claiming to be a scientist. He's not claiming to work in the fields of science. He's using what he thinks is the scientific method to do what he thinks is an experiment, but is really just an investigation, to try and validate or invalidate a claim that he obviously hears within his arena. And well, Nathan, you're welcome to give me another shit sandwich, right, for this. But I would kind of back him up and say he does need to be corrected. I mean, on the use of science, but there's people we deal with and people who won't deal with us who claim science and claim to be scientists, but most of them couldn't even tell you what the main 3 steps of the scientific method are. At least he's trying to understand it, even if he's getting it wrong.
Yeah, and again, I recognise that, which is what another reason I utilised him, because he says it in various different incorrect contexts, and you think, no, you as an individual, you're trying to better yourself. I get it. At least he's trying, right? But he doesn't need to. In fact, it makes things worse. Once you over-egg the pudding, sorry, chocolate, you're going to find that somebody like me comes along and says, well, no, that is actually meeting the criteria of pseudoscience now. So just be careful. Yeah, fine, you're looking into what science is. Hopefully, if he watches this, I doubt it. But if he did, he'd hear, no, observe natural phenomena, formulation of hypothesis, and then systematic experimentation. That's basically it. That's what the method really entails. Because your first scientific method in this red box at the top, asking a question, no, I can ask what I'm having for dinner tonight. So that doesn't work with the method. Seeing something happening and going, what the hell causes that? Yeah, that's a phenomena that's worthy of the scientific method. Because elucidation of cause, when observing effect, is all science does.
Yeah, I can't disagree. You're correct.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just... there was someone else speaking there, I think, as well.
I just wanted to say, like, I think what he's doing is using reasoning, and I'm not sure if it's inductive or deductive reasoning, but isn't he using like a form of logic, reasoning?
Yeah, troubleshooting. Somebody said it earlier. Correct. And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with it, especially when you come to a result that you can actually show a difference with a measurement. Well, that's brilliant. When you've got something tangible to show, man-made or otherwise, he's got something tangible and he's got a method that you can look at, do yourself. Well, wonderful. It's just not science. It sounds like science, though, doesn't it?
It's bits he's done, Nathan, and steps he's taken. When he said, like, I'm going to use this, and this, and to him, he's thinking, right, I've controlled my control variable. So there's bits within what he's doing which resonate with the scientific method. Obviously, the fundamental bit being it's not a cause and effect relationship, but outside of that, what he's doing is using the empiricism the method gives him, which does give his results, in terms of what he's trying to demonstrate, proof, other than it not being science. But I think it's that recognition of certain things he's doing, which he can draw an analogy to the method, that he thinks then makes it science. It's not. It's just really good empirical way of testing what he's testing with his equipment.
Yeah, test's a dangerous word as well. So again, as soon as you've contextualized yourself within science, a test is the actualization of your hypothesis. So a test is a hypothesis test. What's another word for hypothesis test? Say it with me. Experiment.
But you can have a test within things, so you can test something. So it's again a colloquial term now. I think as long as you're saying test and you within the sentence where you're identifying that something's not an experiment, you like if I was checking to see whether acid made water boil, and I wanted to just confirm that the acid was still in there, I could use a litmus test. It's fundamentally a measurement in that sense, if you see what I mean.
Well, his null test.
You've just got to be honest, haven't you? With
well, there's nothing wrong with his null test. The same thing. Might as well stick to what he's actually saying, because what does null mean? Well, zero difference. Yeah. So if you put something through it and it nulls, you get zero difference. So the context is perfect, but it's a different context in measuring things when you talk about a null, a zero difference result, when you invert two signals and play them at the same time and see what's left over. Zero difference, they null. There is no difference. There's zero difference between the two. Make sense? Well, if you're going to test if something improves, makes a difference, you want to run it through a null test. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Love it, love it, love it. Anyway, it's not the same as... Just let me... I'm near there. Not the same as... Not the same as a scientific null. The zero difference result is if A, your presumed cause, what you think's going to cause the effect, not B. In other words, you vary it and get zero difference. So the context of the word null in null hypothesis is the same, a zero difference result. But in a scientific prediction hypothesis, you've also got the alternative. That is to say, you want your supposition to be proven correct. If A, then B. You've got both. So you can't, in his context, have both zero difference contextualized in a hypothesis with the difference as well, simultaneously happening at the same time. He's just looking at what you get out the end when you sum two signals that have been inverted together. Nothing to do with zero difference versus an alternative where you've got a supposition of cause if A, then B, versus null if A, not B. Go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
Exactly. No, that was exactly it. If he hadn't, I was going to say, if it's the conflation of the null test and the null hypothesis as if they're in some way linked to each other or validated. They're not, and there'd have been a lot less confusion if you'd have used it. That zero test would have been a much. I think maybe I don't know whether he's conflating it as null, meaning it has a correspondence to a null hypothesis. He's not. He's not. Correspondence
No, he's not doing that.
Is.
No, he's not. I'm doing that.
Right.
Just look. Just look that he happens to say null. He's talking science. He's got hypothesis on screen. He's talking about nulls. It all sounds very science. And contextually, he's correct in his terminology of null. It's just not a scientific context.
I have something to add.
I think Adam was still in the middle. I cut him off. But go ahead after Adam, if you will.
Just to add, in this case, the null test, this zeroing thing, is actually the test. It's not the hypothesis. That is the point. It's the bit of equipment in the middle. It's the slit. It's your thermometer when you're boiling water. It's the thing that you're using to give you the data for you to then, in this case, draw your conclusions. What it's not is part of the supposition, which is what the conflation is.
It's a measurement tool, because it's measurements. This is maths. He's measuring a difference. Zero difference being a null. No difference being described as a null. Therefore, a null test. Can you get zero difference, or what difference is measured? Oh, that sounds like maths, because it is.
But how can you get what is a null test? Because the null is just the opposite result of your supposition, right?
Zero difference.
So how could you do a null test?
No. In a hypothesis, yes, you're right. It's the antithesis of your alternative prediction, if A then B, rather than null if A not B. But null just means zero difference. If A not B, if A zero difference.
Okay.
You understand? You don't cause the effect. If you vary A, you got a zero difference result, a null result, if A not B. As opposed to in a null test in audio, you take a signal from, I don't know, an amplifier cab, and you record it. Then you make another recording of a different amplifier cab. Yeah? You then invert one of the signals, so it's the opposite way round. You flip the polarity completely 180 degrees, and then feed the two together. Well, if they're the same, they'll cancel each other out, and the end result is nothing coming out, no signal. But if you do hear a signal coming out, what you're hearing is the differences between the two things. So that's how a null test in audio, a measurement of the residual difference between two things, is performed. And contextually, the word null, meaning zero difference, is valid. It's just bastardized when you've had the word hypothesis on screen and literally under the banner and title of the scientific method. Then you've just completely turned everything you've said into pseudoscience.
Neil had something to add.
Go ahead, Neil.
I have to commend you, Nathan. You managed to talk about something you love and not sway from your scientific show. Amazing.
Isn't it wicked? I got to see a mic moving around on a 3-axis gimbal. Or was it 2-axis? Either way. No, did he tilt the mic? I can't remember. Anyway, I got to use that on my show. And Glenn, if you're out there listening, I love you, man. It's so cool. I love it.
What have we got tomorrow then? With Orwin, Earth Curve and Wizardry.
No, let's talk about the looping effect.
That would be Earth Curve.
I feel like I've bewildered and like an animal or something. Like, yo, I totally went in Facebook chats and totally messed them up psychologically. I didn't mess them up psychologically. I just undid their psychological pins, and then it's like, you know what they ended up like, me trying to stick them to the scientific method in the way they think it's being done. Me trying to get them to define terms so that they understand that what they're proposing as a hypothesis is not really a hypothesis, or at the very least, they're using a hypothesis as a conclusion, which is a presupposition. And I've provided as many leaks as possible, educated these people on everything scientific via all of QE's citations, because that's just the easiest place to find them. And they ended up saying, I ended up being, because I guess I was too powerful, so I'm restricted. I basically can't post in the chat. And so what the guy's done is posted like some generic, what is science, what is a hypothesis, and all of this with the diagrams, you know. And he says the philosophers will have us think that the philosophers will have us think that science is presupposition and that it doesn't prove anything. Like, I don't have to say anything more than that. He just basically projected all of that onto me when it was him. He was the one trying to put philosophy in there. He's the one not utilizing any kind of experimentation whatsoever or looking for it. I don't understand what's wrong with these people, because I know he's not thinking.
Okay, let me just hold on before you rant into the guy and how he is and personal, etc. I just want to expand on what you said. The main point of what you said is that people will take a hypothesis and mistake it for an explanation. If A, then B. If you remove the null, zero difference antithesis of that prediction in the hypothesis. So you get rid of the null completely, if A, not B. Just ignore that. And then don't do the experiment. You're left with, instead of if A, then B, just A, therefore B. You turn the hypothesis into your presupposition. Now, frustrating as that is, when you've got somebody, as you described as a philosopher, telling you, oh no, we've advanced beyond the empirical method of science, and now my just so story. I call that a hypothesis. It's the advanced version of the empirical method. You're like, what?
No, it's even worse, because he's learning this stuff on the fly as he's asked me, like we've spoken as if we would both be learning, because for him, I was the most advanced flat earther he's come across. And so when I sent him the materials, all he did was project what he was doing onto me and passing off what he's doing as empirical. He's not saying we don't need that empirical method. He's saying he's following it. And I can't challenge him on it because, well, they've censored me. What are you going to do? That's the world, right?
Well, you got it out in the end. Fair enough. Everyone else heard the same sound I heard and is now pausing to see if that's somebody who wants to interject from Discord. Go ahead, whoever it was.
Yep.
If it's not, I'd like to, Eli, for me, what you're saying is he's just denying it. This is where QE's pink lettering is useful. If you're saying he's following it, say, well, let's just go through it then. And go through it, make his hypothesis, make him show it you. Because otherwise you can be going, oh, I am doing it, I'm not doing it, you know what I mean? Well, that's why I think the pink lettering was so useful. You write it down, it's there and unarguable what's being tested.
Can you remember what that was? If not, you'll have to go back to one of the shows where he starts by saying, observe natural phenomena, please. Goes on to explain that you've got half the hypothesis, technically speaking. If the hypothesis is your cause and your effect, IV, independent variable, and DV, dependent variable, natural phenomena, then half of that is the natural phenomena. So by asking, what are we observing happen and want to study? That's half the hypothesis. So then all you need to get from your opponent thereafter is their independent variable, their presumed cause of that effect. Then you've got a full hypothesis. Depending on what they say, you should be able to then formulate that into a null. If their presumed cause, independent variable, then the effect you're studying, dependent variable, formulated or rearranged into the null as if independent variable, presumed cause of the effect. We will not observe the dependent variable effect observed to happen. Then you've got your full hypothesis. Then it's actualization time. In the entirety of the time presented by QE, we have not once reached the actualization stage because we have not once received a viable hypothesis from any single globe believer ever.
Nobody in my field uses the scientific method. It's seat of the pants, leaps of logic, guesswork. Thanks.
Michio Kaku.
When they do...
I may as well... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll just do to you, Eli, I know. Just saying, when they do write it like that, they do debunk themselves in terms of the claim they were making about the supposed experiment.
Yeah. I was going to read a quote, but you know what? I'll hold off. I want to get these things in order, and I'm going to have a quote for any appropriate time that you can think of. It'll be like 10th Man's Puns, except it'll be your favorite quote-unquote scientists of ancient past telling you that it's not a globe, it's just a religion. So wait for that.
Eli, I only have a coat when it's chilly.
I didn't get it. It's the way.
I only have a coat when it's chilly outside.
Yeah.
Nurse.
Does anybody else get it?
Nurse is doing it again. He's forgotten the pills. Nurse.
Oh my gosh, I'm dying over here. Quote, like a trench coat.
Where's my tumbleweed sound effect?
Oh, that is creepy.
This is the first time it's fallen this flat. I don't know.
So just
all flat.
Okay, just to get us off the puns. Was my point lost in terms of how your average Joe normie with a rudimentary understanding of science will hijack it in the same way as is therefore tolerable in heliocentric terms with just so stories about lights in the sky? Was that parallel made clear with my pulling apart of Glenn's non-scientific claim? Or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the point is, it's the same trick. People see it being done and will eventually use science as a magic word to lend credence to whatever they're saying. Be it bullshit or perfectly legitimate, it's just being used to lend credence, to bolster what you're saying as being more legit than perhaps it might be. And in this particular instance, perfectly legit. In fact, made less legit by claiming it's science. That's a problem. Well, that
just...
And
I just found it funny that I had just did, I just did that 5 minutes before I clicked into the show. Tell somebody something wasn't science, it's technology. And then I come into the show and that's what you're talking about.
But the thing, I don't want it to be lost on flat earthers. You got to be able to read a room and gauge people better. And I say that, I preface with that to say that it's not like Glenn is an anti-flat earther or has an agenda or anything like that. People truly think that what they're saying is accurate because they don't know the nuances and of the conversation. They just think, well, science, I'm doing something, I'm getting an effect. Yeah, this is science. This is how you do it. But there's a difference between whatever Glenn is doing, which is perfectly awesome and outstanding, and an anti-flat earther who's trying to pass something off purposely as a cause and effect relationship and using foregone conclusions to prove their points. There's a really big difference between the two. I don't want people to get that twisted. Most of the people you come in contact with, they don't understand the difference. So don't attack them. That's all I'm saying.
That understanding of the difference, I think, is what Glenn fell for. I think people think if you use a bit of technology cleverly in your test, whatever you're doing, that constitutes science. It's a bit like a person in a lab running tests. Just because they're running tests doesn't make them scientists. They're running tests. They're using a piece of equipment to get a reading. Yeah, but there's I think, a perfectly, not reasonable, but you can understand why people see that. You stick somebody in a lab coat or somebody's using a piece of high technology to obtain a result, that's perceived as science. And if I am doing it and say I'm doing science, you're more likely to believe me, aren't you? If I've got a nice posh bit of equipment next to me, like John Dee's spectroscopy machine, you know what I mean? All of that in the mind of the public, and certainly I think most people, until you're open to this subject, validates your work as being science.
We got any anti-flatties or globers that want to tell us something about something?
Barely even talking to after show. I don't know. They're gone.
Oh.
There's a lot of times it was brought up there last was it Saturday on Ballbusters by I can't remember who it was. He's a lad from South England who was looking for more citations to back up the scientific method. And I remember Adam had a few drinks in him, and Adam got stuck into him. And the lad was just asking for more because he keeps on being asked for more than one from the borders. Because the the voters will keep on wanting to put down whatever QE puts out and puts forward, because that goes against, obviously, what they would deem as science, because they need to hold on to a non-empirical version of something that's real. But the thing about it is that, as I said to the lad that night, I said, ask them for their version and that you want to compare them for what they claim to be scientific method. And if they have a better one, brilliant. But I don't see how they could have a better one. But if they do, and if there was a better one, why would anyone be using this one for decades? Do you know what I mean? It's like...
That's what I said, Brian.
What they're doing.
The reason I was angry, or had anger in my tone, was not at him. It was at the frustration that this flat earth is still there listening to this shit from anti-flat earthers and scurrying off to go and get those and coming to us then to say, oh, this is what I need to deal with these guys. No, you need to stand by your gun and, like you say, and as I said, you show me something that's different, mate, that argues, that has this validity, because it's their claim again, but we're still too honest.
Yeah, you're right, Adam.
If I'm being honest, we're still too honest and genuine when we're dealing with these people.
I don't know if that's the right question to, because here's the thing, like they have a bias, and so their bias doesn't allow them to see that they've gotten things slightly off. So when I say slightly off, maybe I'm being generous, maybe I'm not. So their hypothesis is a presupposition. So once they have the presupposition, then they're going to be looking into the presupposition and using cycles, usually the cyclical nature of the star, to make measurements based on the presuppositions.
Yeah,
so
I don't think Adam's disagreeing. I think Adam's trying to explain that his frustration is born out of people who are scurrying around to get citations when you should be taking ownership of the argument and saying, I tried to back Adam last time by saying I don't even get citations for anything ever. In other words, it's just my argument, you've got to deal with it or not deal with it. Not, oh, I'll run along and get you a few more citations then if that one's not good enough. I'll be back in a minute.
Nathan, you say that,
Hold
but
on
it's
a
just
second.
adding weight
Did you
what
say...
you're saying.
Hold on.
I don't think there's nothing wrong with that.
This is the lad.
This has gone on for 2-3 days.
I wouldn't put it in that tone. I wouldn't put it, I'll go away. I'd probably put it more like, how many weapons do you want in your arsenal? Yeah? You've got enough to take them down. Yeah? And if they're saying that weapon won't hurt, it does when you use it against them properly. It's there. We don't need any more. We've got enough.
Hold on. Did Eli? Is everybody going to let Eli get away with that? Slightly off? They have the sun at 93 million miles away, Eli.
I missed that.
Slightly.
Hold on.
I'm talking about.
Hold on, Brian. Not Brian. Who was it that just said that? Neil. Can you give context to what you were talking about? I missed that. Can you just...
That's a fallacy, though. You want him to give context to a fallacy?
Eli said, they're just, they're slightly off.
I didn't say they're slightly off about their presuppositions of their measurements.
Their whole thing is slightly off.
I'm just saying the method is step 1, step 2, step 3, and they're using step 2 as step 1, step 3 as step 2, step 4 as step 3. That's what I mean by slightly off. They kind of have their categorization in error slightly, and I said I'm giving them that to be generous. What you just did was gross.
I'm making a joke. But anyway, however they did it, they still got their sun 93 million miles away. I don't give a shit how they set it up or what they did. Or they're off here a little bit or they're off there. They go one step ahead of the first step. It puts the sun 93 million miles away and puts us on a freaking spinning water ball. They're way off.
Okay,
I think the point Eli's making is that, and certainly I've heard ballers say, yeah, well, once I've done my experiment, I'll give you the hypothesis.
What?
Yeah, that's Slice Barcane. That's Slice Barcane answering me specifically for his hypothesis when he was going out to do a water level experiment. And in answer to my question when asking him for the hypothesis was, I'll give you that after I've done the experiment. That was his answer. Slice bar came.
Well, the lad that came in there a few minutes ago, the English lad, I don't know his Discord name. I think the thing is that Max. Sorry. No, I won't forget it because you have a very distinctive voice. Max, I think the thing is that I think on our side we need to know when to ask the ballers for, when because for what they are claiming to be the real thing, because it doesn't have to be scientific method, it can be anything. They'll tell you, you're wrong about that, you're totally wrong, everything is wrong about that, and you say to them, no matter what it is, whether it be an angle, whether it be anything, it could be any small thing or any big thing, and when you ask them, okay, then correct me, and all they can say is you're wrong, that means they don't have a correction. That means they don't have anything. So if you ask them for, okay, I don't mind what you call it, you give me a method that's better than the scientific method I have to validate a natural cause to a natural effect, and I'll accept it, I don't mind. And they won't be able to give it to you. So you don't need to come up with any more citations, because the citation you have details the best method there is. So it's the same for everything else. Every time they ask you, every time they put down that and you do or say that you're wrong, ask them to correct you. And if they can correct you, you go, okay, I was wrong. But if they can't, that means they don't have a correction. It means that they don't have anything other than bitterness, if you know what I mean.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I understand that. But what I'm trying to say, it's good having that, but having the evidence behind you as well is also better. It makes your position even more stronger. That's all I want. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's what gives you a position. Because if you don't have evidence, then all you did was wake up. What do you mean?
That's wrong. Sorry, I've got to correct you on that. Right. You're saying give me more evidence. No. All a citation will be...
I have it already.
I'm sure you have. I just want it for the audience as much as you, even if you have already. So a citation is not your evidence. It can support your argument, and your argument might have evidence, that would be proof, that comes along with it. But the citation, on its face value, in every respect, is just a baseless assertion. That's all a citation is. So you could take something I have said, put quote marks around it, type it out, go to one of these places and say, here's my citation. And that is a valid citation. It's published, whatever. The point is that I've said it, so what? Does that make it legit? No. If I was there saying it, I could then back it with whatever I'm backing it with. And you take ownership of the citation when you cite it. In other words, that becomes part of your argument. But it isn't the argument. It's not the evidence. A citation at face value is just a baseless assertion. It can be used to support your argument. Adam's frustration is born out of your willingness to go and get it. I know you've explained why you want it, and I'm not disagreeing with you. Adam's trying to express to the audience that the frustration is the lack of ownership of the argument in the first instance, and the tenacity to say to the opponent, no, if you say my citation I've given you, or my description without citation of what the method entails is wrong, you need to either describe how and why it's wrong, so I can then refute or rebut that, or give me your version of the method so I can rip that shite to shreds. But that takes you and your tenacity rather than more citations. That's not an attack on you, it's a generalisation for the audience's benefit, just so you know.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
What I would say about, let's just say the scientific method, your evidence is the method you're presenting. It doesn't matter whether some university supports you or not, unless they can come up with a better, more empirical method for finding the natural cause to a natural effect, then that's your evidence. Your evidence is the strength of the method. So you don't need, for something like that, you don't need anything. And I think maybe it's a bad idea to even present any citation for it, if you think of it like that, because all they're going to do is ask you for more. Just send it back at them, put a ball back in their court. You give me a better method. I'm all ears. You tell me where I'm wrong or where that method is incorrect. And
I agree. Just give them the scientific method and say, this is what it is, buddy, and that's it.
I'd like to say something when it's time.
What time would that be?
Right now.
It is right now.
Right now.
Just one thing. Sorry.
Hold on, it's not right now, 10th. Go ahead.
I'll wait.
Just one thing. The reason why they told me to go and find a different scientific method, because they were saying I was just using QE's scientific method, but I wasn't. I was using the one that he took from the university, and obviously the generic one that we all should bloody know from being in school. And so I was trying to look for ones which was similar to QE's, and there is one or two which are similar to QE's, but yeah, I just wanted more citations which was similar to his sort of 4-step approach, and just give it to them like that.
Okay. Do you want to know another reason why there's a bit of hesitancy? I did explain this to you last time, right? You are expected to know it when you get to degree level, right? That it's taught to us at a very early age. Therefore, it's just not the kind of thing that's easy to find. Now, through extensive time spent researching, QE has found rudimentary descriptions from qualified people about what the scientific method is. Now, when I first said, just give me all the citations for the exact same reasons you did, I might add, he was like, no. I was like, why not? It's like, go get your own. Because at the time I didn't know him that well. I was like, well, just give me all of those citations. You've got a whole page of them. Just give me them. He was like, no, go and get your own. You go and do the hours upon hours upon hours of digging through endless papers to get them, and then you can cite them.
Which is very important, because you want, people who know how to, the people that know how to, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. We got to be able to drink ourselves. You can't be hooked up to two. It's funny because just yesterday, when we were in here late night, down in I think it was the after show, and the dude, it got to a point where he muted dude, and he is like, no, you can't have my citations. You can't read them. Get the fuck out of here. I was like, damn.
Hey, I hate that. You can
They're
leave
not
the same.
important.
I love it.
They're not important. Nathan, did you go and research all those references? And get your own?
Did I? Bollocks. What I actually did was...
But what you do, and when you're in a debate, they're useless. Because what you got to deal with and what you've got to do is know the scientific method, so that when some anti-flat earther tries to flim-flam you with pseudoscience, you can take apart what they're saying to you and demonstrate to them why it's not science. That's what you take to the argument, not that skill, not references.
What I did do was ask
I don't mean to pick on you, Eli, but I hate
Niels,
that you
go
can
ahead,
lead you can lead a freaking horse to water, but you can't get him to drink. I hate that. You can you give him some salt, he'll be thirsty, and then he'll drink.
Okay, thank you for that. So what I actually said to QE at the time was, do I actually need these citations? Because I'm lazy. And he was like, no. And then he explained pretty much verbatim what I just explained. At face value, they are baseless assertions. They can only be used to support your argument. So I said, so I don't actually need them at all. He was like, well, no, you don't have to have citations. I was like, ace. Well, then I won't. Why? If I don't need them, I won't have them. Why bother?
I get what you're saying, though, because basically, at its bare bones, the only reason you need a citation is because someone doesn't trust you. So they want it from an authority. But it's still just a baseless assertion unless you can demonstrate it anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. What you just said is correct. I agree with that.
It's useful.
So I was going to jump in before too and say that
Hold on, three people, hold on. Adam then Rams, or Adam then Chocolate then Rams. Go ahead, Adam.
They're useful to intimidate your opponent, but fundamentally, if your argument isn't coherent, all the citations in the world won't help you win, will it? You've got to have a coherent argument, and if you understand the scientific method, it helps you take apart the incoherent nonsense they are saying and be able to demonstrate why it's not science.
Right, Chocolate.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, that's like if I'm talking to somebody about, gas behavior, I don't need to pull out a piece of paper to show you what this person says about how gas behaves. That's not my argument. Gas actually acting that way is my argument.
Right, you just let one go in practical demonstration. Excellent. Rams, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the citation that you might use in a debate is going to depend on who you're appealing to, whether you're appealing to the other person or the audience, and to what they're going to accept or what they're going to find as valuable or persuasive.
Okay.
I would say concerning something like the scientific method, along the lines, I actually was going to mention that before you did, Nathan, but along the lines of what Nathan said about the scientific method is hard to find a citation for it. The reason is because if you're trying to find a citation for maths, you won't find one because there's no need for one. It's just something that everyone learns. It's an intellectual tool that everyone learns and uses to different degrees. But the scientific method is a much more basic in its formulation because it has to be of a tool, but it's still just an intellectual tool. So you're not going to find a lot of citation for that because it's just something everyone knows. It's like a citation for, this is more sarcastic, but it's like a citation for making a cup of coffee. It's like, you're not going to find that. You know what I mean? It's just like, people know how to do that. They already know that. It's a known thing within the world of actual physics, what the scientific method is. People learn it in school, people use it if they end up being a scientist of some kind, whatever.
I reckon there is a citation on making coffee. I think there is one.
Is there, yeah? Well, I'm corrected.
Well, just so
No,
we're round this out, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, Max. Go ahead.
No, I'm finished. I was just
going to give you an example. So, if you're describing gravity and you're in a debate with somebody about it, and your position is that they don't have any force to assert, and you accurately and succinctly describe pseudo-Ramonian force space, length, breadth, depth, and time, space-time, and you lay out all of the parameters of that mathematical description that is akin to Narnia, yeah? You can do all of that with justification for why it isn't a force, and then go on to say, quote, gravity is not a force, end quote, George Musa, Scientific American. But it wasn't necessary.
I've used that one already.
Right, but it wasn't necessary. Before you jump in, it wasn't necessary. It's sufficient for me to describe pseudo-Ramonian for space-time and the geometry of space-time as a reified concept, succinctly, concisely, and accurately, without citing anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes sense, yeah.
But whoever identified that it depends who you're appealing to. If you're appealing to some normie that's like, well, you haven't got a lab coat on. It's like, why are you trying to convert this complete normie? Until a lab coat wearing guy says Earth's flat, he's not going to accept what you say. Until it's broadcast by a guy in a suit sat at a news desk, having been declared by the president, he's not going to accept it. So why appeal to him at all? Just say, yeah, okay, go in peace. In our you trust.
Is it my turn?
Yes, good. Just let Max respond if he's got anything, and then whoever that was with the car alarm going on in between.
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm
okay.
All good. Thanks.
Car alarm from G+, whoever that was.
That was me, 10th man.
Go ahead.
All right. I can't help but line this up with sales. How many of you have lived off commission your whole life, where your appointments matter? And if you're at the wrong appointment and you drove an hour and a half to get there, you wasted time and money because you had to pay for the gas to get there.
Me.
You got to qualify.
Boy. Yes.
You got to qualify every time you go to a debate. Pretend you're a salesman living on commission and your knowledge is valuable. So you got to ask a question first. Is it important for you to find out the lie about gravity? Wait for answer. Is it important for you that we can prove there's no Earth-based Coriolis and the Earth is not spinning? Is that important to you? Get the desire first. If the desire is there and they say yes, then you always have that to go pin them to when they start going astray. Hey, I thought you said this was important to you. Well, it is. Okay, then are you interested in information or should I stop?
What you're describing in sales terms is the assertion of what's in it for me. What's in it for me for this guy? You've got to find out if he is... Well, I would like to know the nature of reality. All right, well, that's what's in it for him. I'll tell him. If there's nothing in it for him, why appeal to him?
That is an excellent point. That is so excellent. It's like in the Matrix.
Let me finish
can you imagine? Then I was just making an example of what you were saying. I'm not going to. It's like in the Matrix, Neo. Okay, well, I was halfway there.
I was not even halfway through mine. All right, so let's say your product is swimming pools. Are you going to call on apartment dwellers? Hey, I'm selling swimming pools. Dude, I live in an apartment. What makes you think I'm going to put a swimming? Where am I going to put it? No, you got to qualify them. They need to have a home. They need to have money. They need to have a desire for the pool if it's a hot summer, right? There's rules of engagement before you go into full-time commission sales, or you're going to go broke. Treat this that way. All of us have the arguments. Ask the questions first. If they're interested, go for it. You can always pin them back to when he said he was interested. Then you can give him homework assignment, because if he's interested, he'll do it. If they don't do any of that, like Nathan says, go in peace. That's it. Go on.
Yep, I do that. I give out homework assignments. Come check me when you got this. Thanks. I almost never get them to come back and check me, but I try anyway.
It's interesting because that's what I've tried. That's the sentiment I share with 24/7. Most of the time, it's like you're spending 3-4 hours arguing with somebody you don't know. Why don't you know in 5 minutes whether you actually should talk to them or not? AKA, why haven't you qualified, the situation? Like you're just talking to somebody. You didn't ask them, well, hey, why are you here? Okay, what is it that you want from me? Perhaps I can do it. Perhaps I can't. But what is this thing that you want? Immediately when they tell you they want something that you can't do, oh, I can't do that. That's out of my power. Sorry, can't do it. That's like, imagine the Matrix, right?
Here we go.
And instead of Neo, like, being this person that was curious, they just drag some dude off the street kicking and screaming. No, you're gonna take this red pill. You can't do that.
Exactly. You got the speech from Morpheus. The Matrix is all around you. It's everywhere. The guy goes, Nathan, what are you talking about? That's what you get. Yeah, go get me a citation.
And also,
alternative movie, Morpheus argues with the normie for 2 hours.
Where's the edge? Where's the edge of your Matrix?
And also,
just because you don't understand Morpheus.
Yeah, you don't understand. You don't understand. We figured all this out. What are you talking about, Matrix? What? Nah.
And also,
well, I mean,
questions.
Wouldn't that be cipher?
Can I have a citation for that, please?
No.
Wouldn't that be Cypher? In the
No.
end, he pretty much turned on them and.
No, Cypher's the equivalent of anti-flat earthers. He's stuck here in our matrix, but they're, one man's heaven is another man's hell. So for me, life is sweet. The air smells pure. There's nothing but a world of possibilities out my window right now, and that makes me extremely joyful. That's like my version of heaven. That's how I see it. I'm doing the job I love, got a beautiful family, everything's fantastic, right? Well, there's another dude in what was the same arena. It's now been separated out into anti-flat earth and flat earth. But for that guy, the recognition of the lie is being suppressed as hard as possible, and it's torture. It's pain on a level that I can't even comprehend most of the time. So that's Cypher.
So imagine that, being in so much pain that you would rather have all the tubes be stuck right back into you, put me back in the goop of the soup, right? and just erase my memory and let me not know that that's where I am, and just let me imagine that the world is beautiful and what I want it to be. Like, imagine that.
And I'll forsake my truthers in the process. I'll even murder them.
Yep.
Right, he chose to rather be the goop than eat it.
Can't not remember where you've been.
Bliss.
You can't unsee what you've seen. That's why there's anti-flat earther as the title. Because they're in the same pit as we're in. They've rolled down the same hill or climbed over the same fence. No matter which way you dice it, they're the same place we are. Now, they want to deny it. And they want the tubes put in, and they want the memory wiped. Because if they'd never come across this subject, they'd be in blissful ignorance of it, and they want that back. They even call themselves Globies. They believe that they're somehow going to get back to that path of complete ignorance where they were all excited about the next rocket launch rather than concerned that there's some flat earther pointing out how it's all fake. And that concern is something we don't experience. Yeah, I run a show about this subject. It's fascinating. But I don't actually run my day up commenting with commenters beyond what I feel is arbitrarily required to keep my YouTube stats up. I don't concern myself with it. It's not something that ruins my day. But the amount of times I've heard people describing how they're losing sleep over this stuff on the anti-flat earth side, and they do describe their pain, even if it's projected directly onto us. Like, yeah, you might describe me in that way, but I'm not that way. You are.
Yeah, because imagine that, right? Like, some of these globers now, right? Like, let's say, one of these, like NASA or whatever the hell they're doing now, like SpaceX or this recent Richard Branson nonsense, whatever they're doing in relation to space, right? These guys, like, now, they can't really sit back and enjoy it and just say, look at this is wonderful, isn't it? They have to sit and now wonder, are they going to have good CGI on this? How is it going to look? Because I'm going to have some weird flat earther ask me about this. It's like a nerve-wracking thing now. I mean, it's insane.
You're right.
Yeah, right? Because they have to be like, oh my God, like, it looks so bad. Shit, I don't want nobody to ask me about it. So I'll just pretend I didn't see it at all.
Right.
And just say, it's not relevant because the consensus says that that's real.
20 years ago, everybody could just dream. Now, the dreamers have to worry about invaders of their dream, and that's us.
Well put.
Oh, another eclipse is coming around. Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
Here we go.
Oh, here we go. I'm
yeah,
telling
exactly,
you, bro,
Owen.
that's what they're experiencing, man. I know it.
Owen said it best. We're the invaders of their dream. Their dream that they were unaware they were having as a part of a cult called heliocentrism, a religious belief they didn't know they had. They want that back. And they see us as standing in the way of that. One day all the flat earthers will be gone. It wouldn't make any difference. You couldn't unknow what you know. You've got here. You've seen what you've seen. It's not like us not talking about it anymore will change you and your existence, anti-flat earther. There is no climbing back up that hill. Cypher can't go back in, his memory can't be erased, the tubes can't be reinserted, you cannot go back to blissful ignorance and globe belief when you're all happy about the rocket launches. Now you've just got the pain. And the only pain relief, the only actual pain relief, is to accept the nature of your reality. Now, I'm not going to force feed it down your throat. I don't care if you don't take the blue pill. It doesn't bother me.
Right.
Damn it, let me
we're
dream.
Here to stay. Yeah, but we're here to stay in this dream, and we already can experience this, because if we stay away from them for too long, they'll come looking for us, because now they know we're there in their dream and we're doing some magical thing, because they still think it's real, and they miss us now. Now they come to us to make us poke them again.
Arwen, to them, we're the nightmares, man.
Yeah.
That's why I said it in my. That's why I said it in my song, bro. I said, look,
but dude,
no 8 inch per mile squared. That's why y'all scared to have this become mainstream. So as a result, we've transformed into nightmares, waking folks from the daydream.
That's a good one. But you know how it works so much like that, because aren't nightmares, like, once you get over the initial shock, aren't they like really fascinating? Don't nightmares make a real impression, and you like try to speculate, what was that? Right?
Only once you wake up.
Like that.
I don't know, but chocolate's nice.
Yo, so
no, first you want to wake up, but then afterward you're like thinking about it because it's so impressive, right?
Drop that again, chocolate.
That's a whole bar, man.
So there are a couple of ways.
Go on, Eli.
We're gonna do
Go
the
on.
bar.
Go, Eli. Go.
Having a conversation that I've had over the last few days with other flat earthers, there's a couple of ways to get someone who is heavily under the influence to like kind of at least have a spark of realization. And the one thing that she said to me, it had me have a realization that I hadn't even though I'm, it's obviously not a globe, I hadn't thought about this. And so she said, you remember all of your first experiences, right? Your first kiss, your first loving hug, your first car. You remember that? Think about that experience. Get into that experience in your mind. Now think about the first time you experienced the spinning globe. How was that? And all it is milk done. I just have an image in my mind of the ball as soon as she said that. And I was like, whoa, like I'm reading this as an implanted thought, because instead of the emotion and all of the stuff that I was just feeling when she had me recollecting my first kiss and all that, he says, now think globe. And all I have is this picture, this image in my mind.
It's a Math Powerland argument, photo or painting. His first statement that really, really cemented itself in my mind that I could repeat and say to other people was, you never get this vantage point. I mean, these days we say space is fake and just debunk the entire region, but you'll never get that vantage point. You'll never see the Earth as a sphere. You'll never go out to a sky vacuum because it's not real. So what's your experience like, your first kiss of the globe? Well, you haven't got one.
Mine is trying to figure out, really? This is really what it is? People upside down and stuff? In all directions? On a ball?
And here's another good way somebody else probably did it before, and I kind of remembered it when I did it. And so I got frustrated with this guy that I was talking to, because he came to me like he really wanted to have a conversation with me, because I seem to know all of this stuff that he's never come across before, talking to Flat Earth. But he's just an anti-Flat Earther and doesn't know it. So I said, okay, you know what? Let's do it this way. Let me ask you a question. Since you've been talking to Flat Earthers for a while now, why don't you detail to me why those Flat Earthers think that the Earth is not a sphere? And then tell me what your rebuttal was. And you know what he answered with? Funny enough, ironically enough, well, the reason that it can't be flat is, and I was just like, yeah, I thought so. You don't even know why Flat Earthers don't believe that it's a sphere. You don't even
Yeah,
know.
I was gonna say he just skipped over the first part of that question, huh? 'Cause I heard
He
it.
didn't. He just started to answer a question nobody even asked.
Yeah, I know.
That's our position this entire time. All we said was, "Hey, where's the globe?" And all they've done is go, "Well, prove it's flat."
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a burden of proof reversal fallacy at its heart, because the extraordinary claim is that there is people antipodal from my position, that the world that appears to be flat and is measured flat is actually falling away 8 inches per mile squared. That is the extraordinary claim.
Literally opposite to what we observe. But then they'll ask you to prove what we observe, which I always kind of laugh at. It's nice to laugh in real life to somebody when they ask you, "Oh, prove it's flat." "Oh, prove that what you see every day is what you see every day." Is that what you're asking me to do? Because have you seen it otherwise? And then that's when I get the tumbleweeds and the walking away and all of that. It's a shame.
But when they can't answer gas pressure without a container, Earth-based Coriolis, the lack of Earth turning, and Black Swan, lack of curvature.
If I say Coriolis, they'll look at me like that's some medical condition. They don't even know what that is.
I'm just going over what Nathan said. They make the extraordinary claim. So show me curvature, show me Earth-based Coriolis, and show me gas pressure next to a vacuum. That's the extraordinary claim. Yeah, but prove it's flat.
I mean, you can stop at curvature. Once we got curvature, we got something to talk about. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't got any of this other shit without that curve. And what do you need for that curve? That radius. Y'all got that radius? Nah.
Well, it's the year of the sextant now, because we use the radius. We use the radius of a circle to obviously to deduce we're traveling across a large area that is level. Like, there's nothing else to be said.
Yeah, because at best, what we've done here is debunk the radius. So, what's his name again? Sensible. That sensible guy.
Mr. Sensible.
Mr. Sensible. Yeah. Not very sensible. First statement out. You debunked the radius. Eddie Glover's in here.
Only Baldwin.
Nah. I don't want Baldwin. Nah, no. Oh, okay. So I have to distinct now. Make a distinction. So any anti-flat earthers in here? Either or will suffice.
I heard a very funny supposed globe proof I was listening to, not last night's Brandon show, but the night before. I was listening to it yesterday, so the next day afterwards. And there was a guy on it, and he said he had direct core of measurements, right? And his proof was that this place, I've seen this claim before, but this guy, it was really funny the way it happened. This guy said there's this place where they test out the small model versions of big ships and submarines and stuff. And it's a big, massive tank that's 450 feet long. And they have rails that they run these ships along this water, and the submarines are underneath the water. And they create tidal movements within the tank to see how good this design of hull will deal with it. Will deal with the tidal movements, and they're going to try and find out something before they go building a monstrous ship or submarine, whether it's going to work or not. And this guy claimed that these rails are always, every part of these rails are 18 inches exactly above the water line, right? But the rails are actually curved. So he's claiming that there's 450 foot of curved water, right, in this tank, right? So Brandon and then we're questioning him. He said, okay. So he says, how much curve then is there within? He says, I don't know, but there's curve. It's curved. And they did the maths on it, and there'll be 1/333rd of an inch of curvature through 450 foot of steel rails, and that's his evidence of globe. And that's like not even, you couldn't even.
What?
Yeah, you couldn't. It's so small, like over a length of 450 feet. How would you ever even determine that tiny variation is over that? You know what I mean? It's so bad. That 1/333rd of an inch is the amount that.
Is this like a new guy on the scene, or?
I've heard him on
Is he an
Brandon.
old head?
I don't know the guy.
Like, what the hell?
I heard him talking there.
What the hell is that?
1/333rd of an inch.
Stay over there with that crap. Or please bring it here.
I mean, they were rolling, laughing like that. And Brandon and them are laughing their asses off.
That's freaking hilarious.
That's
man.
the worst.
Like what?
Go on, sorry. That's the worst. Go on. That's the worst. It's the worst piece of evidence for the globe I've ever heard. It's pathetic on unbelievable levels, if that's what you got.
Well, it doesn't even address the point that the water will find its level even if the tank was tilted. It would be higher at one end, lower at the other.
Yeah, I mean, there's no even. It's like Rumpus claiming that on that 1 foot of table in front of you, there's a very, very minuscule amount of curve or floor underneath you or something. Now, this kind of thing. It's as bad as that kind of claim. It's purely pre-assumptive. Do you know what I mean? You have absolutely zero evidence, and anyone who claims they have evidence for this have zero evidence to back it up. Anyone who's claiming, because supposedly this fella's saying that the claim is from this institute that they have curved water, and it's like 1/333rd of an inch. That's the amount of curved water you can have in accordance with a globe Earth radius, right? That was never measured, right? That's the amount you can have over 450 feet. It's so pathetic. You know what I mean? That it's one of those claims that can never, ever, ever, ever be verified. And that was his direct measurement of curve. It's unbelievable.
But how is that a direct measurement of the curve of the Earth? How did he get from one to the other?
Well, I suppose if your dreams are being invaded by flat earthers and people who are just realistic people, like Bev, who are just questioning what you're claiming as reality, then you're going to have to come up with all kinds of crazy nonsense. Like Bendy's uncle.
Do you think they spend a lot of time of their day like coming up with shit like this? Like, what would be a good way to convince people that all these flat earthers are crazy? Right? Do they spend their time like, I don't know. I wish there was a Glober here to ask.
Well, that curved water tank is not high on the list of proving a flat earther is crazy.
Wait, is that water curving on the outside of that tank?
That's like the number one proof how crazy they are.
Bro.
That is such nonsense. It's like, why are you wasting your time with that guy, Brandon? Just kick him off the show.
I mean, I guess you gotta let him air it out, right? You gotta let him. I guess if there's nothing more pressing going on. But what the hell?
Well, the guy made a direct claim So Brandon allows him to get his claim. It's okay. Then he wanted to hear his claim.
So how did it end? I want to know how it ended.
Laughing. Even
how it should have been.
How did it end for the guy? What did the guy do at the end?
With me, it wasn't me. It was just on Brandon's. I wasn't on there. I was just listening to it.
No, I know. But we know we're laughing at it just by you retelling the story. We know that. But what was the guy's response to the laughter at his preposterous claim?
He kind of, I thought his response was kind of nothing. He just kind of went quiet. Brandon didn't give him 2 hours at a time, but it was just like it became very evident very fast that even people on his own side weren't kind of backing him up on it. They weren't going against him, but they weren't saying, like, there was Boyo Jewel and a few others in there. They weren't exactly jumping in to say, no, he's right. It's like, because you can't, it's a claim that can't be validated.
So you could have had a white knight fundraising moment and no baller with a joint to help this guy?
He would have been
That must
blowing in
be
the wind.
another nerve-wracking point, right? When somebody, one of their own, are making a really horrible argument, and all you got is crickets from the rest of them. Because if they think they have somewhat of a decent argument, somebody's gonna try to jump in, right? But when somebody's coming up with the dumbest shit imaginable, like, and nobody on their side is like even trying to interject, like, is that nerve-wracking for them too? Like, it's like, ooh, maybe you shouldn't say that. Or are they in agreement with it? Like, I don't know. I know I'm going into the mind state, the psychology of these clowns, but it's kind of fun. The best example for me is Homegirl, who showed up over here and wanted to tell Nathan that he came up with begging the question. I'm sure there were Globers in here, and not one of them could have tapped on the shoulder, hey, I understand, Nathan's moron and flat earthers, they suck and all that, but they didn't come up with begging the question. That's a thing. Not one person.
Can I answer?
Sure, that I'm done.
Don't we cringe when stupid flat earthers come on with nonsense like freaking ether?
Yeah, but Chocolate's point is that, and correct me, Chocolate, if I'm wrong, that we will correct them. We will have it
exactly.
They don't do that. Yeah, they won't do that.
They have to sit there because they have to sort of be all in agreement. They can't outwardly disagree with each other, right? Maybe if they're in their own little, wherever the hell they are, their little roach motels or whatever. But in here, they're not gonna actually go at each other. They can't do that because then it doesn't look like they have a united front, which they don't fucking have anyway, because there's anti-flat earthers and then there's ballers now, right? Who agree that they live on a magical ball but don't know how this magical ball works, which is freaking hilarious.
Yeah,
I mean, joke, man.
Sometimes a baller, you can, like, there was a guy, Stingray, who hangs around on Jose's. He came on to Nathan's one time, and he does modeling and all that.
Dean?
Yeah, Dean. Right?
Yeah, Dean.
Dean came on.
Dean's still around? Is he still alive?
I don't know. I don't listen to Jose, so I don't know.
Oh my God, Jose! Jesus.
He came on to Nathan's, and I was listening to the show, and I knew Dean from being on Jose's and that, and he was new in the whole arena, probably about 2018 or 19, and he was claiming a globe, and Nathan showed him Randy's 1 foot observation, 18 miles from a 1 foot observation point, and Dean couldn't model it. He said that is a quandary. I can't model that. I don't know, and Dean was just working off of globe stuff. He was working off of the amount of refraction they are allowed to have per distance and height of observer and all this, because they have a set amount. Like they could go into the metabunk, and you'll see the geometric horizon, then the geometric amount, and then the refracted amount of hidden and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, Dean showed up before the Black Swan.
Yeah. So this is going back now a good time before. This is going back about 2 years or more before the Black Swan. But the thing about it is that Dean disappeared. Dean was supposed to get try and model it or come back and see if he could or whatever. And he was being honest on the day that, yeah, he couldn't model it or whatever. But then he went off and he came back a long time later. And I was listening, I don't know if I was on that show either, I was listening to it. Anyway, and he came in and they brought up that the 1 foot observation, Ranty's 1 foot observation. I think this was pre-Black Swan as well. And they brought up Ranty's 1 foot observation. Nathan brought it up in QE. And he says, oh no, that's just refraction. And they said, well, that wasn't your answer the last time. And he said, yeah, but I didn't know what refraction could do back then. So that meant that Dean had gone from being a glober, who actually was just being honest the first time he was in, to having to believe a heap of rubbish and not realizing that he has transitioned into an anti-flat earther. So he went from being a glober the first time he was on and having to just see evidence that went completely against what he thought, what he could see as possibilities, to being an anti-flat earther, to claiming ridiculous things to do with refraction that, that he could not back up, but it didn't matter as long as it was anything but flat earth. So
wow. He had a transition moment.
Yeah.
Right. Him having to admit that he could not model this using his own globe crap was that moment where something has to give now, right? Something's got to give because this has to make sense. So that's when you move from the globe arguments, which don't make sense, to the anti-flat earth arguments that don't make sense either. So that's unfortunate for him.
With that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!